Hello, everybody.
Oh, we're going live?
Yeah.
I needed to fix my hair. It's a little bit embarrassing. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but you did great. Like,
Yeah,
maybe a bit on the side, or you really
just like
like
this strand right here is just bothering me. You know. Okay. See, it's just right here. I need a haircut. That's what I need.
Rest day tomorrow. You have
Rest day tomorrow. I gotta have to get a haircut.
So today we have 10th round at Tata still. And guess what? We are here in Vaikansee and Masters are where? In Leiden.
Yeah, I'm a little bit jealous that they got to be at Peterskirk in Leiden. And as you see, we got camera footage of them. It looks like, oh, there's Vichy. What's he doing? Finding his board? I mean, he'll say a few words.
Oh yeah, trying to find who he's gonna play today. It's Magnus Vichy.
Yeah, not hard for him to know who he's playing. Someone he's sat across the board for a long time.
We have so.
I don't know, but I do get by with a little help from my friends. So I'm glad that song just started playing right now.
We need some music here. It is boring. We need some music.
Yeah, well, Smart Kid says Robert looks like a French inspector. I'll take it.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, Inspector Clouseau. I can do that.
Totally. And me, I just put my jacket on for today. How's that?
You look phenomenal. I mean, of course.
Just for Vichy and Magnus.
Yeah. And it actually seems like there are many fans here getting ready to watch these games because we had a broader shot earlier. There's Vichy in the foreground. Where's Magnus, though?
I don't know. I guess he'll come soon. He cannot be late.
Is this him? I see someone walking in the shadows.
Yeah.
Oh, that's definitely Magnus.
That's him with his bottle of water, Isklar.
Isklar, exactly. And that handshake has been seen many times in recent years. Of course, Magnus dethroned Vichy Anand for the World Championship. And
then
then
we have Ding.
There's Ding. And Vichy came back to face him again as the challenger, but Magnus was victorious once more. So it's a great matchup between the two. What's their head-to-head score again?
Magnus is leading 10 points to 8, so he's leading 2 points actually.
Okay.
In classical games, but I think that after the match, Vichy bounced back a bit. He won some games, and he's really happy when he's beating Magnus. He cannot hide it.
Yeah, we'd have to ask him. Actually, I've been waiting for somebody to ask Vichy. Has it been better beating Kasparov in a game or beating Magnus?
I guess Magnus.
You think so?
I think so. I don't know. Nowadays, for sure, Magnus.
For sure, yes. But I just wonder, because Vichy's been around for a long time, so he's beaten both players, and which is kind of a sweeter victory. Because he beat Magnus a bunch when Magnus was younger.
Yeah.
But now that Magnus is in his prime and 28, 40 and all that, I wonder which victory just
I remember I was in Norway and there was Norway chess. Magnus played terrible there. He lost to Hammer. He lost. I think he lost to Vichy. And when I saw Vichy, he had such a big smile on his face. He cannot hide it, and it's great.
Yeah, no, and Vichy is a great player, and I saw in the chat people are still rooting for him. And the last classical game was being told by Lady Macbeth. The last decisive classical game between Anand and Carlsen was won by Anand.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the pairing today. Besides this matchup, because we of course know Magnus with the white pieces against Vichy and Anand. They're both at the top of the standings, as is Jan Nepomniachtchi.
Right, and today is the game of the day is this matchup between Magnus and Vichy. And what do you think? I think d4 will happen.
I agree with you. And you said match of the day. I think it's no coincidence that they're the only board in the middle here while we see all the others flanking them. But d4, you will actually. I'm not going to say anything. You predicted his opening yesterday. I don't want to get involved here.
Yeah, don't bet against me. It's really women's intuition here. You cannot do anything.
I just think it's a great chess player's intuition, and I don't know how to compete with you in that regard because your a6 h6 prediction yesterday was absolutely phenomenal.
Thank you.
And well, we see that there are some festivities. They're just having plenty of speakers here.
I think this is a mayor because this chain. Mayors are wearing those chains.
I kind of like it a lot. Can I just be the mayor of this studio here?
Easily. Easily.
I want one of those.
Easily.
So, I don't know what he's saying, but hopefully it's, we're going to start the games.
Yeah.
Let the games begin.
Exactly. Handshake and first move. So, we have also another important games and very interesting matches. Not only Magnus versus Vichy, but another interesting games are Duda versus Rapport, two young players clashing each other. Dingliren versus Mamedyarov, Vidit versus Kramnik, Van Foreist versus Nepomniachtchi, Fedosiev versus Anish Giri, and Sam Shankland versus Timur Rajabov. Exciting to see Fedosiev versus Anish Giri because they played decades ago, and Anish has actually lost 2 games against him under some age
I thought
category.
Anish won those games.
I think he lost.
Let's look it up because I just assumed because it's Anish Giri.
Oh, did he win? Shame on me that.
I will have to check it out because I thought that their results were from way back in the day, but let's check it out. Well, not shame on you. You're just saying you want his revenge, right? I see 1 victory, and I see 2-0.
Okay. Shame on me, Jesus Christ.
It's okay. It was before you knew him, right? So
yeah,
I'll have to forgive you. It was over a decade ago.
Thank you very much.
And okay, we see your prediction is wrong.
Oh, okay. Today I am just doing very bad, so I think I should leave my sport then.
No, I definitely want you to stay here because I'm sure you will be predicting many good moves after the first one. So E4 was played by Magnus. I'm hoping we do not see a Berlin, but look at these matchups here. Magnus Vichy.
Yeah, I love those clips.
Duda Rapport. Look at this. I just love it. It's so intense.
It is. Like, ooh. And the music as well. Love it.
This is actually my matchup of the day. I'm very curious about how Vidit and Kramnik will battle this one out here. And Van Forest and Nepo will also be exciting.
Right.
Fedosiev and Mr. Giri. And Shanklin Rajwa. Shanklin is the darkest background there. So it's a little scary to see that. But so the reason why Vidit versus Kramnik is my matchup of the day. Kramnik having a bad tournament.
Right.
Escaped yesterday.
With a draw.
Lucky draw. But has the black piece against Vidit, who lost yesterday, is typically a calm player. But I could see him, trying to fight back towards an even score because it's frustrating to go from a plus score to an even score down to a -1 score.
Right. So it will be very interesting. And we have E4, E5.
Yes, we do. And we have a Spanish and
Ruy Lopez.
And instead of playing knight f6 on the 3rd move and attempting to enter the waters of the Berlin.
Yeah, no Berlin today.
No Berlin today. Vichy plays a6, and after bishop f4, then knight f6. So that's good. I can't complain that.
Knight c3?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that.
Knight c3. It just sort of,
That's not a main move.
Well, it's a move.
It's a move,
right? Typically players will castle, and there are very long lines in these variations. But I think this is a good choice by Magnus, as even in their World Championship matches, Anand was seen as the extremely well-prepared, just force.
Right.
And getting him out of theory early on, especially when Magnus has the white pieces, it's not like Magnus doesn't know what to do in these types of positions.
Right.
Anand the same, of course. But I like just being on your own as quickly as possible.
So it looks like 4 knights, and he went like normal bishop b5, but instead of symmetrical bishop b4, a6, bishop a4 was played.
Right. So oftentimes, as you said, there's bishop b5, bishop b4, but a6, bishop a4 has been thrown in, which changes some things here. Black, of course, can play b5 at any moment, which forces the bishop back to b3.
Right.
Obviously not the end of the world for either side there, but b5 is always a committal move.
It is.
And just to show something here, because sometimes people think, oh, well, b4 undermine the protection of this pawn.
Do I lose the pawn?
Well...
Did he blunder already on move 6?
I don't think he has quite blundered. For starters, one of the things that come to my mind is knight to g5. Right. And we see that there's problem on f7 and not able to protect this pawn. So after knight g5, well, knight takes f7 is a pretty vicious threat. And when you are met by a move like knight g5, you would love to be able to castle in one turn. Not
yet.
Possible here.
Bishop is still on f8.
Exactly. So after knight c3, Vichy is thinking. And that's already a good sign to me for Magnus.
Yeah, he takes his time. He is a little bit surprised, but I don't think he minds that much because, okay, knight c3 is not something very dangerous. They just got a game, so he's going to play.
Yep. And bishop c5 has appeared on the board, and people are asking, why does it appear so dark there? Well, they're in a pretty old church.
It is impressive church. It's an amazing Peter's church, St. Peter's Church in Leiden, and it is just so pity for us that we're here.
Yeah, you were the one who broke the news to me. I remember several days ago we were walking, and I was like, I'm so excited to go to Leiden. And you're like, Robert, I have to tell you something. I'm like, is everything okay? And you're like, we're not going.
Yeah, he was really excited. He was like, oh, have you seen pictures? Oh, it's so beautiful. I told everybody. And I'm like, take it easy.
Yeah, you ended my dreams of going to Peterskirk and Leiden. But, okay, the players are there. We're still here in Weichensee. As you can see in the background behind us, this is where the Tata Steel Chess Festival is taking place. Still many players in the other sections are here, as well as the challengers.
Speaking about Peter, we have one very special Peter in the studio.
We do?
And I guess you know who is that?
Well, my brother's name is Peter, and he's not here yet, so I think I know who you're talking about.
Right, so I think he would be very happy to join us in like 20 minutes, not yet.
Okay.
But yeah, people were asking, where is Peter Lacko? But he'll be here very soon.
He will, and I cannot wait for him joining us. And I just looked at the corner of my eye this Dingley-Wren game.
Right.
So I'm taking us there because I saw pawn on g4.
Ooh,
and when I see a pawn on g4, already I'm thinking a bit of an aggressive approach.
Ooh, wow. What is that? So from where it came from? Okay, it was just the Grunfeld c65, right?
Yep, so it was a King's Indian type setup, maybe a Grunfeld, but instead this fianchetto. And you mentioned this several rounds ago, how it's annoying for players with the black pieces because it's much more solid setup and doesn't give you the same sort of activity that you like from the black side.
No, yeah, it's just one open C file and good luck, take it.
Yeah, it becomes sort of like an exchange Slav where both sides have fianchettos. So it's very interesting to see this dynamic unfold. And, okay, a lot of players would not be comfortable in positions like this. I play this all the time online.
But it is very early knight e5, right?
Yeah.
There are lots of moves like castle first or knight c3, but the idea is always to go knight e5.
Right.
I've heard once that whoever goes knight e5 first is better, but this is not the case.
That's an interesting saying. In the US we don't have that, but maybe we should adopt it and we'd be even better at chess. But yes, the knight e5 idea is typical, even if there's a knight on c6, because whenever, let's say this knight's on c6, and you capture on e5, once this d pawn takes, you have some problems in the d5 square. So knight e5 jump, all of this is pretty natural. You always have to consider this queen b3 move.
Yeah.
Right? Whenever I see bishop f5, my immediate response is, well, maybe queen b3, as the pawn on b7 has lost one of its defenders, and this pawn on d5 is a target. I assume after queen b3, knight c6 is the very logical reply, because d4 is now hanging. If you take on c6, I fix both of my problems at the same time. Right. No longer do I have a pawn under attack here. No longer do I have a pawn under attack on d5. Feels like you've kind of fixed your position, even though you have a somewhat backward c-pawn.
Yeah, and it feels also like that black already finished his development. White still needs to castle, still needs to find a place for this c1 bishop. B file is open. So, yeah, I think black is doing very fine.
Yeah, the lead in development is definitely a nice thing for black in a position like this. So knight e5, castles, knight c3, and castles, very logical. And here, g4.
Yeah, that's something that caught my eye as well. It's like, oh wow, I've seen these motifs. I think it was an endgame. It was like when g4, this g4 was winning, and exactly with this knight e4 kind of idea. But I'm very bad in names, so I don't remember whose game it was. But I know it exists.
Yeah, and it's definitely a fascinating move. And of course, the point is to dislodge this bishop from the f5 square, where it defends e4. In the game, we see bishop e6, knight takes, pawn takes, bishop e4, and white has gone up a pawn.
Right. So another thing was, of course, not to give up the pawn and play knight c3 because black was not forced to give up the pawn. But then it is difficult, for example, for the bishop. You cannot go bishop e4 because then it will be f3 and the bishop is trapped. You still have to go to e6, I guess, or bishop c8, but then c4 might be annoying.
Absolutely, right. As soon as your bishop returns, I spy this pawn on b7. There's going to be ideas with c4. Even a simple move like rook to b1 is an option. And while this pawn on g4, we talk about this a lot, right? We want to put our pawn back now that this is the situation. We needed that g4 push to encourage knight takes c3 to help our pawn structure here. And
that's why we have a position with pawn down for black, but at least he enjoys that the pawn is on g4. If white had pawn on g3, then he would, I think, enjoy very much his extra pawn.
Right.
But pawn on g4, it weakens the king a bit. There are always some ideas to get this pawn back with bishop e5 and bishop g4. But first, black has to take care of bishop b7 threat.
Right. That is definitely something I'd worry about. And I'm almost curious, is black going to continue sacrificing pawns? Because a move like knight to d7, saying, I'm going to challenge your knight on e5 with my knight instead of taking with my bishop.
Right.
And even if you take b7, perhaps I get a ton of counterplay as this pawn is on g4. So let's say bishop takes, knight takes here.
Ooh, you don't want to take bishop a8, queen a8, because then it would be very scary. All these light squares, I'm scared.
Yeah, there's definitely some problems with the exposed king on g1. I don't know if it's full compensation, but it definitely is some compensation and quite a bit. And even if I maybe take on g4 with the knight and take on d4 with the bishop, these sort of lines give black compensation. There has to be concrete.
Yeah.
And this is Ding's preparation, so you have to anticipate that he has used an engine to evaluate this.
Right. And if he is playing very fast, I think Mamedyarov, he has 1 hour 41 minutes, which means that he did not think so much. You just don't want to get into preparation just like this and accept the sacrifices.
Yeah, you definitely do not play the move g3 to g4.
No.
If you have not seen this many a time on your computer screen.
Right. Okay, so should we get to another game?
Sure, let's go through all of the games here. We can check out Sam Shankland versus Timur Rajabov because that game is a move 14 already.
Right.
Typical Sam Shankland, breezing through the moves. And in this particular game, we see a Catalan.
Oh, I love it.
I figured as soon as I saw what the position was, it would suit your style.
Right. I really like it. It's very, very nice and very popular opening. Though I like to play against it as well because there are so many things black can do with d takes d4, bishop b4, bishop e7, c6, all kind of move orders. And I think DC happened in this game, right? Not right away, but after,
Yeah, the delayed DC, and it often transposes, but the big difference is since black has castle first, once you go queen a4, it's not check. So black doesn't have to spend a tempo blocking the check, and then white will capture c4 anyway. Right. Here we see that a6 was played, queen c4, and b5. So this gives black the opportunity to develop the fianchetto on the long diagonal, challenging this bishop on g2.
Right. Bishop b7, and here it's a lot of things going on. This is still theory. I think there is like until 30 moves, it's all known. But with big differences, because after queen c1, black has many choice, right? He can go back, actually. Bishop b7. c6 was played in the game. I think bishop b7 is the main move, if I'm not mistaken, and then white decides to go with the d2 bishop somewhere, either f4, g5. Bishop a5 is not that great after knight c6, but c6 was played.
Yeah, very interesting, because as you noted, in positions like this, oftentimes say I make a move like rook d1, just to emphasize what you were saying, bishop a5 can be quite annoying to deal with, as the bishop, we saw Anand's bishop on a4 yesterday.
Right.
Here we see a bishop on a5, just pressurizing the c7 square. And in this game, c6 was played, and at first glance, that looks like a very strange move, because in general, you want to play c7 to c5.
Right.
To get rid of your backward pawn. And here, if the move knight c3 is played, doesn't it just look like, oh, I'm kicking this bishop away. Maybe eventually, if this bishop goes to g6, I can play for knight to e5.
Yeah.
Things like this sort of would concern me. But it's not that clear cut, because of course black wouldn't play c6 and then just volunteer something.
No.
This doesn't feel too fun, although the d4 pawn always has to be kept. An eye has to be kept on that d4 pawn.
I guess the idea is to go bishop d5, and you don't have yet e4, so once you want to play e4, maybe rook e1, then knight e4.
Right.
But I'm a bit confused. What would happen if I play queen c2?
If you play queen c2, perhaps I
right?
I have this b4 move in time, because of course your knight is under attack, so you're not quite in time to play e4.
Right.
c6, though, yeah, it's a move that feels weird in a position like this.
It does, yeah.
But it does have its merits, as we're discussing. We'd love to get rid of our backward pawn by capturing here, which further blockades this bishop on g2. So after c6, Sam went rook to d1. He's playing very quickly.
Yeah.
Which means he's in his preparation.
1:45. And the game starts at 1:40, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yes, exactly. So he's gained 5 minutes on the clock since the beginning. Rook c8 and now knight b to d2, which is interesting. We often talk about the knight being on c3, but here knight b to d2 was played in the game.
I like knight d2 because after knight d2, sometimes you go knight b3 and you want to take control of this c5 moves and c5 square.
Exactly.
While knight c3, when there is b5, it gets under b4. You have to take care of b4 at some point. And where does it go?
Right, the eventual b4 is definitely annoying.
Yeah.
And the one thing when I see a knight on d2, though, can I get the c5? That's always the essential question.
Right.
Can black play c5?
Yeah, that's a big question, and that comes to mind very first. Like, it's the first move.
Yeah.
It is really, because you want to open up some light. You're ready for that.
Right.
Okay, you might think that, okay, first I develop my queen and then play c5, but if I can play c5 right away, why not? Why not, actually?
And that's the real question. Can c5 happen? So the first thing you have to think, what's happening on this diagonal?
Yeah.
Right? Do I take on f6 first? Do I leave it? Do I want to capture this bishop on e7? For example, knight takes e4, knight takes e4, bishop e7, queen e7. I don't know. I'm not really seeing as much here, because if I take on c5, yes, white has this bishop, and it's on a very long and nice diagonal, but there's nothing there. And it can provide some long-term advantages, for sure. For instance, if I take, and let's just say we take with this knight, and this queen comes to e3, I quickly see this knight going to d4, and as Kramnik showed yesterday, sometimes a knight on c6 is quite a nice square. Right. So that is definitely one of the pluses in white's position, and I think that is enough to give white an advantage. That being said, it's not like black is forced to play the c5 move, but it's the one you're always trying to play, your first candidate move anytime you have a position like this.
Yeah, I'm also wondering what move like h6, because I want to ask a question. Do you want to trade this bishop or you want to go back? And if you want to go back, then c5 might be more powerful, because after all the trades on e4, you cannot trade dark squared bishop. Right.
And I guess I can take on e4 as well as an option, but you were mentioning this. Do I want to trade these bishops?
Right.
And c5 is coming. And it's one of those like move by move things.
Yeah.
Is black in time to play c5? A move like knight to e5 comes to mind here, queen to e3, and is white just going to be able to prevent it in time?
Yeah, for now it looks pleasant, right?
Yeah.
For white.
For sure. So, and third alternative is what we were discussing before, the bishop to d5, is can I just park my bishop, or maybe even play to this way, but let's say, sorry, bishop d5. Is white able to get this e4 move in? Doesn't look like just yet.
Yeah.
And this move with queen c2, well, now black is certainly in time to play c5, and very happy to do so with this rook here on c8, eyeing the queen on c2, and this bishop has gained space in the diagonal, so won't get trapped. It's very interesting.
It is, and what I'm wondering actually, and if I can ask to our producer, is that if Timur Rajabov had games with c6, because c6 is kind of a move that you don't expect, but Sam reacted so fast that I'm wondering, is it Rajabov's pet line and Sam just prepared against it, or he just knows what to do against c6?
Yeah. Yeah, we'll definitely have, when we have Peter Leko in the studio as well, we can ask him these questions because he knows everything. He's better than chess base, right?
Peter would know, yeah. For sure.
And bishop g6 was played, so that move makes a lot of sense because you're getting your bishop out of harm's way. You still control this e4 square. You have 2 minor pieces just compared to 1 for white. Now the queen, of course, can't go to c2 as the bishop covers. So maybe this is just a solid-looking move. Knight e5. Keep talking about first candidate move.
Yeah, 95 is like, oh, please play 95. It's the first move and the move what you want to play. Though we have to take care once again what happens after c5, right?
Always can c5 happen.
Yeah.
And it looks like you're in time to do so. And as well, the other thing you have to consider is if this trade does happen, is having this backward pawn c6 better or worse than having this double pawn on e5? So these are very important questions, and ones that are not easy to answer without very deep analysis of the position. But for everyone watching, these are the first things that Sopiko and I think about because we know sort of the ideas behind the structure.
Right.
And many, many different ideas here. Rajabov went bishop g6, and Shanklin, we'll see if he continues his torrid pace or if he spends
out
time.
the moves, right? Yeah. Interesting games, and we have I read a comment that wow, Van Forest is winning. Was it a spam?
I'm gonna take us to that game, but somehow I don't think that Jordan is winning.
Right. It does not seem like.
We're still in the opening variation. I do want to point out that Vidit seems to have arrived because no moves have been played on that board for a while, so I'm not sure exactly what was going on there, but moves have been played. So that's good to see. But in this opening, we see a Najdorf, knight f6, and a6. Najdorf.
Right.
Scares me. I'm done looking at this game.
I love it.
Najdorf is just too much theory, hurts my brain, don't know what's going on.
I love it.
h3 against a Najdorf.
That's the move which was played very, very many times. And just starting from Bobby Fischer, right? He played it a lot of times, then it disappeared somehow, then it got back again, and here e5 was played, but I love e6. I don't know. I love not to give the d5 square. I'm scared of d5 square.
Yes, and that's a more classical setup, right, with this e6, d6 pawn structure. h3 is nice because oftentimes if you don't play h3, for example, bishop e3, black makes his annoying move knight g4, and challenges your bishop on e3. Played many, many times. So here h3 and e5, it's a matter of taste.
It is.
As you said.
Yeah.
What really concerns you, so from black's perspective, that's a big red square. Like, oh, I need to defend that always. The worst possible scenario is if you trade off these 3 pieces for these 3 pieces.
That's going to be awful.
Right, because then this d5 square, you cannot control it.
Yeah.
There are no pawns to kick it out, and you're left with a dark squared bishop. Dark squared bishops cannot attack light squares.
Is it forepost or outpost, or they are same? I always mix up.
Outpost.
Outpost.
Yeah.
Okay.
That would be the most beautiful kind of classical outpost in chess.
Right.
So that would be the dream. Of course, that dream hardly becomes a reality when you're playing strong players in chess. And here we go, f4. And after f4, challenging the center, pawn takes, bishop takes. Okay, there's a lot of theory involved here.
Yeah.
We're not going to challenge all of our viewers to go through it, but this has all been played before. Castles, queen c7, and g4. So very direct attack by Jordan van Foreest, going for g5, kicking this knight, and, well, that d5 square does look quite tempting.
Yeah, but it by no means is that Jordan is winning. He has a lot of time on his clock, but I have faith in neither.
Yeah.
It happens. This type of positions arises many times, and seeing g4, g5 does not mean that, oh, there's a great attack and that's over. But I think Peter Leko knows that better than me. So we will have a quick video clip of our leader, Jan Nepomniachtchi, and then we will have Grandmaster Peter Leko in the studio.
This tournament is very special because every year a lot of strong players come here, and the world champion and the top seeds in the world, and everyone is fighting, and this is a good point to start the year on some pleasant, result. My best move in the life, but I always try to answer that it's somewhere, it's waiting for me in the future. So that's what I tend to believe. I can only advise a beginner that everything you do in your life should bring you some pleasure, and I really hope that when you play chess, you know it's a pleasure for you, and this is probably the most important thing in the whole life, and especially in chess.
And we're joined in the studio now by the one and only Peter Leko. He's here to help me get through all of this Najdorf theory, because Peter, I can't do it alone. So firstly, nice to have you here in the studio.
Yeah, thanks a lot, and it's nice to start with the Najdorf.
I think we should jump right into this very game between Jordan van Foreest and Jan Nepomniachtchi. Jordan, the young Dutch player, and Jan Nepomniachtchi, one of the co-leaders in the event, taking up a risky line.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, okay, h3 Najdorf is one of the most principles, and yeah, Nepo always likes to meet it with e5.
Yeah.
And I remember that he had a lot of games in the knight d2 line, bishop e6, bishop g5, kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, but knight b3 wasn't really played against him, and then after this knight b3, he chose bishop e6. I mean, this somewhat surprises me, because after f4, it's not that bishop e6 is the main move, but somehow connected with f4, e takes f4. This is strange.
Yeah.
Because usually it's considered that if you get this, knight c6, white has this extra option of queen e2, which normally you don't have, because it happens a lot of times from this opening. I mean, it used to happen in the 90s, like here.
Mm-hmm.
And this was a different story, and then queen d2 is met by d5.
Right.
And white misses this tempo on h3 for the queen e2 setup. But now, compared to this, you have gone h3, e5, knight b3, bishop e6, f4, and you were given the chance to play bishop takes f4 in one go, and you have the h3 tempo, which means after knight c6, queen d2, d5, it would not really make a huge impact. But it does give white suddenly this option of going queen e2. And to be honest, I think this is considered to be good for white. I mean, queen e2, bishop e7, and if this line is good for white, it also means that it's quite an easy game for white.
Right.
I'm not liking Nepo's decision. However, Jan is also typically such a Najdorf player that he's kind of used to not getting theoretically perfectly sound position right from the beginning, but he just believes that he can handle those type of structures very, very well. And I'm pretty sure that even so that he thinks that maybe this is not the best position he got, he might still be happy.
Right. And actually that's something that higher rated players often do against slightly lower rated players is they may sacrifice an opening disadvantage for winning chances later in the game. This position is not closed at all. If white delays a couple moves, for example, and okay, we don't expect Jordan to misplay this, but if white just takes too much time, then we can see the C file is open. These ideas, of course, relating to attack on the queen side.
Yeah, well, there are a lot of aspects, of course, but I'm not sure that Jordan is the right person to give such a high ball. I mean, Jordan is an extremely aggressive player who will not think twice taking his chances if it's given.
Yep.
And we have already seen that he has lost a lot of games, but he has already won 2 in his first Vaikanze debut, which is a sensational by itself. I mean, winning 2 games here is extremely difficult. You have seen such great players like Kramnik and Mamedov still together. They haven't won a single game yet in the tournament. This is extremely tough, and Jordan is the one who can deliver checkmate if he gets the chance. So I'm very, very interested to see how this game will continue. I feel that the theoretical debate has gone in white's favor, but the big fight is still just starting.
Yeah, absolutely. And just actually to show a potential line, like people I saw in the chat were saying, G5 and knight d5, which is a very sensible decision. But, if you can take with the rook or the pawn, always a typical debate. But if I take with the pawn here, and I have this knight on e5, I can see how if you're not so familiar from the white side of this position, it can concern you. I've given this knight outpost on e5. What am I going to do with my bishop on f1? You can just leave it here or play h4, bishop h3. All these are reasonable. But then is the knight coming to c4? What makes, I believe, a great player is when you make those question marks, you still have the confidence to figure them out over the board.
Yeah, of course. However, here I think really white has a nice choice because the queen on e2 is so nicely placed for this structure already. I mean, just imagine the queen would be on d2. It already feels better on e2. I mean, sidesteps any kind of knight c4s. Usually white really wants to go h4, h5 and g6. Also, king b1, bishop c1 is a typical idea just to cement the queen side. At the meantime, for example, typical stuff would be that black makes those moves, basically preparing some shelter. I mean, opening the rook, the bishop gets there, and the bishop would love to get to the long diagonal. Right. However, this also looks scary because the h file gets open right away. Yeah. And this is exactly what black is faced with. That then, for example, against h4, how are you gonna approach it? Any kind of counterplay, maybe some quick a5, a4 would be an idea. However, okay, a5 is strategically always very dangerous because white might just block it, but then here now some aspect that the queen is on e2, so maybe the white bishop cannot land on b5 quick enough, and maybe black can just start some crazy counterplay with b5, for example here b5, queen b5, rook fb8, and maybe black has won the game. The knight is hanging. Exactly. And you cannot take a b5 because then a4 a3 is just a devastating counterplay. So here we see again why move like king b1 is so often it looks like white is wasting tempo. And what is this? But in fact, it stops all kind of this direct counterplay, and it means that yes, maybe you give time for black to consolidate his position, but you avoid all these direct threats, and you claim that anyway my h4 h5 plan is now faster than black's counterplay.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think strategically, white's position is excellent, right? And if you this is what we always say every day. If you imagine a position, say, without the queens on the board, especially if you ever push this pawn to a5, then as you mentioned, this b5 square is very juicy, not to mention that this diagonal, because black doesn't have a light square bishop, it's problematic.
Yeah, you are very good with these arrows. I mean, I just, this is one of my weakest spots in chess.
I think it's good for you. It's a good trade-off. You have the high intellect and the great knowledge of the opening. I'm good with the arrows. I can do this if we want.
Yeah, this is so beautiful, and it probably helps the audience understand things. Yeah.
It's a necessity, I feel like, just the arrows. But so what do you think that after castle here, so Jordan is taking some time, which...
Is he taking? I'm not sure. Yes, he's taking, yeah.
What do you think his reaction will be here?
I think he, first of all, kind of enjoys this feeling that maybe for the first time in this tournament he got something he likes. I mean, this type of position he likes, and also he for sure knows that this has gone good for him.
Yeah.
And he doesn't want to spoil it by too quick play. So it's absolutely right that he takes his time, because maybe those nuances of starting with king b1 first or g5 might have a huge impact for the future course of the game. And I'm really happy that he takes his time. It means that he is fully aware that this is already a critical position, and that's a good sign. That's the way to approach this type of position.
In fact, that was actually before you said it, so you beat me to the punch. I was gonna say maybe king b1 is the safe move. It's like, well, I'm playing the white side of a knight orb. I should attack, but this is not the typical like rook takes c3 sacrifices. White should have some time here and should be deliberate, as we've been talking about some of these other variations. So maybe starting with king b1 versus playing g5 right away, there's some difference and distinction that could be important. I don't know if that's necessarily the case here, but it's always good to contemplate whether or not that's the case.
Yeah, exactly.
So we see that Jordan is going to take his time, so maybe we can... Oh, as soon as I said that, g5 has appeared.
Yeah, but he did take his time.
He did, so. Yes. And, okay, so what other games... I mean, plenty of games have been interesting. I actually had the question for you. Just go back to the Shank game quickly. We were talking about this moment with c6.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about the c6 move?
Well, there was a game between Dingler and Rajabov, and I was here in the studio, and I kind of already talked a lot about these nuances, how this whole line developed. And that game saw bishop b7 instead of c6,
right?
Which used to be the old classical move. And then I said that it's pity that we didn't got a chance to see what Dingler then had in mind against the c6 line, because since Kramnik introduced it to the top level, in fact I think against Anish Giri in London, then suddenly the whole elite started switching to c6, and it's considered to be easier life than the other lines.
Yeah.
Now it's also clear that, however, this line is considered to be fine for black. It's something that maybe black players have worked out 2 years ago, when it was important to know that, aha, I'm just switching my setup to c6. Then 2 years ago you checked it and you were kind of happy, and you have so many other problems, you move on to other lines.
Yeah.
There were so many other critical lines in the Catalan, and then you abandoned it, and now it's the white players who focus on this position, and they might come up with a new idea which you have checked back then, but you already forgot the details. So this is always kind of a very tricky scenario. It's not necessarily that Rajab is taking his time because this is all new for him, but he is kind of trying to remember all those nuances when you don't expect some line to happen. In fact, there is also this common saying now in the elite that if you haven't repeated the line in the last week, it means that you have never looked at it.
Yes, I've heard.
Just so much information right now.
That's a very good point. And you know, the c6 move is of course known, but knowing that it exists versus knowing the details is a huge difference. And actually, I was interested in this game in particular because Shanklin was moving. I think after move 14, he had an hour and 45 minutes, so he had just blitzed it out instantly. And now after bishop at g6, I think he took his first think before playing knight to b3.
Yeah, which is surprising. I mean, first of all, let's just explain that the knight really belongs in these positions to b3.
Yes.
So it would be just a strategic mistake to play knight c3, which looks like tempo, and I'm kicking the bishop out. Yes, you kick the bishop out, but suddenly all your pieces are terribly placed, and it's not clear what to do. But that's why bishop g5 is a very natural move, giving the d2 square for the knight.
Right.
And basically what white is trying to achieve to stop c65. That's what's all about in this position. So rook c8, knight b2, bishop g6, and white kind of has to go knight b3, and it's connected with all his previous moves. Somewhat surprising that why he really spent so much time here.
Well, one thing I was saying, Peter, was that in a position, any position, I mean, it doesn't matter specifically, the move candidates that always should come to mind is for black, c6 to c5, and for white, knight to e5.
Exactly.
And whether or not they work is a different story, but you have to have them in your head. And so perhaps instead of knight b3, maybe he was thinking about knight to e5, because if we have a series of trades that begins like this, let's say knight to d7, well, now c5 is going to be easy to play. But sometimes you have to worry about this d6 square, especially with this rook lined up here. Okay, the e5 pawn is a potential weakness. kind of knowing these things is sort of basic in a sense, right? You just from playing the opening, but evaluating whether it's a strength or weakness is a totally different story.
Yeah, it's very, very tough. What I'm only surprised of that usually you make up your mind or you study those details at home already before the game. Yeah. But one should also not forget that this game is not played after rest day. And this is very important. Maybe Shankland just thought that, okay, hang on, Rajabov didn't play the c6 line against Dingliren. Yep. He went bishop b7. I'm actually quite happy playing against bishop b7. And then he checks that game, he looks at all the finesses, he looks at his file, and then he sees no reason why not to play, and then he just thinks, hang on, but we are moving to Leiden, I don't have so much time, the bus is leaving, what am I going to do against c6? Ah, yeah, okay, I'm going to do rook d1, bishop g5, knight bd2, I will scare the guy, and then you already run out of time, and you don't have time to finish off up your preparation. So it's not necessarily the case that Sam is perfectly prepared here with white.
Right. And if you're not perfectly prepared in a line like this, black can equalize. Like, okay, it's not easy to equalize. I don't want to say that, of course not. But I'm saying if black is extremely well prepared and white makes some inaccuracy, once that c5 break happens on favorable terms for black, then it just becomes pretty dead.
Yeah, exactly.
And sometimes even favorable for black because, well, for example, there's a queen on c1. So if my queen was not on c7, then this file being open is nice for black. But it looks like Sam is, after queen c7, we'll take a bit of a think. So I guess we can continue our search around the games here just to see what's going on. Because Magnus's game versus Vichy has made some moves, and we were talking about this position knight to c3. So we knew you'd be able to fill in the gaps.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, okay, this game is very, very interesting from the opening point of view because, I mean, what to do against Vichy? I mean, everybody knows that Vichy is extremely well prepared, and he works on his openings for already more than 30 years.
That's why I played the French against him.
Yeah, but you had black.
Yeah.
That's an easier stuff,
okay.
because then you make up your mind.
Yeah.
But here, first of all, you don't know what you have to decide. You're going to go e4 or d4, c4.
Yes,
I mean,
sure.
Magnus is capable of doing all of this. So he finally chose e4, and definitely the first thing when you go bishop b5 is that what am I going to do against the Berlin? So he kind of probably finally made up his mind for something, and he was looking forward to it. Or he might not, but he had no other choice. He had to choose something. Yes. So, okay, anyway, he was ready. And suddenly Vichy goes a6, bishop a4, knight f6, which, if Vichy does this, means that he wants to play the open Spanish. And I think Vichy has also given some interview where he was stating that while preparing and seeing a lot of games of Shakhriyar Mamedjalov in the last 1 year, he noticed that open Spanish is again very much alive.
Yes.
And he has been playing it a lot in the 90s, and it was one of his beloved weapon. Different lines. Then he has kind of abandoned it during the whole years of 2000. And there was now a right moment to come back to it. And Magnus says, you know what? So you're going to go knight f6. I'm going to go knight c3. I will stop you threatening me with the open Spanish. And basically, I invite you back to the anti-Berlin structures after bishop c5, bishop takes c6, d takes c6, d3. Now, whether Magnus had in mind that against knight f6 he would have played, for example, this line. This line, we don't know. But his indication of playing this position with black having the pawn on a6 instead of playing an open Spanish indicates to me that most probably he had something similar in mind, and brings me immediately the game that he won against Karyakin in the World Rapid Blitz in Riyadh last year, when he played this knight c3 stuff, and like in the game, he played with h3, but in that game, I think Karyakin played with bishop d6. And this queen d6 is a different setup. Black wants to make sure that he is not getting pinned.
Yes.
Usually those pins are never really dangerous in this structure, but in that particular game, it really hurted Sergei. And okay, queen d6 is a very nice reaction, and Vichy plays in the style like of the other line where you play with queen d6, bishop e6. This is a very healthy setup. And we see now that white is not trying to do anything big, but just get this structure with the exchange of the bishops. And this is always the big debate. Is this complete equality, and that position there is no advantage for white, or that there is no advantage, it's clear, but there is no real hope of getting anything out of it, or is it playable? And it's almost impossible to give a final verdict.
Yeah.
After each game it changes. Suddenly if white gets something, then people start playing 5 more games on this topic, and they are very excited. Then suddenly black draws 4 or 5 games in a row, then people say, okay, but this is completely empty.
Yeah, it's actually interesting because I used to play, when I was playing mainly e4 and opponent would play Spanish, I would go into these exchange of taking on c6, and people often were like, well, you don't really get anything. And I was, to some extent I would agree, but I just liked having a neutral position. And then I saw Yu Yangyi play in the Capablanca Memorial, and he won several nice games in exchange, either delayed exchange on c6 or exchange on c6, and I was like, well, if Yu Yangyi can do it, then I think that shows that there's something there. And it's not like he was beating low-rated players. He was beating other 2700s.
He has also beaten Kramnik in the crucial game in Qatar Masters in the last round. Yeah.
So I was going to say, he's carried this kind of exchange variation in the Spanish to really high heights. And so when I see things like this, and we talk about this exchange in the Spanish, well, you get to a position like this. You don't like that these pawns are doubled. Just from a endgame point of view, it's hard to just say, oh, they're terrible pawns. They're not. Of course, they're not bad. But it's really about the long-term setup. And this is one of those, the line I did not like was when there was always the knight coming to f5 and the bishop to f8, these, the long variation of the exchange. But here, I think that players are a little bit more on neutral territory. Now, first, if Anand is still thinking how to recapture on c5. Yeah. So it indicates to everyone watching, you think, what's he thinking about? Just take the piece. He's got to take the piece, but there are important distinctions. My first instinct would be, well, what about knight takes c5? But then he immediately has to think, well, what are the repercussions if, for example, a move like knight takes e5, which doesn't seem to work here, because after takes d4, I have a fork, but I'm a little bit more concerned about losing this g2 pawn. So if knight takes e5 doesn't work, well, what about d4? Which is, again, the most natural reply. So instead of me sacrificing pieces, I'm just making a strong move in the center.
Yeah, basically forcing ED, and then you have the choice between, okay, not choice, because you're going to take queen takes d4. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then you have to evaluate those endgames, yeah?
Yeah, which can be very annoying from the side of the black pieces, especially, I feel, with the bishops traded off, the dark square bishops. If we get into something like this, well, this is not a bishop's advantage. In fact, this bishop doesn't have a useful diagonal for the time being. Of course, white can castle this way. So if you castle long, I castle long in return. Already there are some thoughts, well, maybe white will play b4 to kick this knight and then take this bishop. So you have to compromise your pawn structure on the king side as well. f4 as an option. I am maybe overstating how nice white's position is, because it's often about the plans.
Yeah, exactly.
And if I asked you, Peter, what are black's plans here?
Yeah, well, black has several plans as well, but I have to first say that this looks like a dream for white.
Exactly.
I mean, usually people don't give this structure so easily, and yeah, I do feel that the bishop on e6 and knight on c5 is misplaced, while everything that white has is very harmonious. So which makes me believe that, for example, if already these things happen here with d4, ed queen d4, then somehow black should most probably castle first, keep the tension. Because if now you cannot castle long because of queen f4 check, this is important. I don't believe that you have the right to take my g7 pawn, because with the king in the center, and okay, rook g8, rook g2 is coming, so this I would just eliminate. And if you are kind of forced to take on d6, I might first of all have the option of taking back with the pawn on d6 and then go for d5 or f5 break, and then it's already a much healthier position. Or I can even try to think about rook d6 when you haven't got long castle and you didn't get your knight to d4. So in both cases, certainly already an improved version. Then white has the other option of avoiding the queen trade with queen e3, trying to get rook d1 playing short castle, but then already it feels like black got a lot of activity, and all these breaks with f5 should be more than enough. That's kind of my thoughts, that it feels that black should go for this long castle and should be quite happy.
Right, and in these type of positions, it's funny, just to talk about the structure, oftentimes white can consider some kind of aggressive approach here, especially as you said, you're going to castle kingside. It's asking for a lot, so you can't just push your pawns and hope it works. But with this pawn structure as such, you may think, I don't want to touch it, I want to leave these double pawns, but this is actually a thematic way to an attack on the queen side. Now, in the game, he took on c5 with the knight, so the move we were expecting. I guess he was thinking, because in this type of position with d4, is there, I don't know, this doesn't look like it can possibly work.
Yeah, it feels very artificial.
Exactly.
By the way, yes, no, it's kind of not losing, but it feels unnecessary.
Right.
I mean, you even don't want to waste time on it. And okay, taking with the knight, it's very natural, because, for example, if white would just play something like knight g5, go after the bishop, first of all, you can move the bishop, but also the knight on c5 is perfectly placed so that after f6 you can take with the knight.
Yep.
And once black gets that structure, then he will start saying that, you know what, my double pawns, I just love them.
Yep.
I'm going to go c5, I'm going to go b5, I'm going to go knight d4, and I'm the one in command. The knight is so beautifully placed, so whenever white goes after the bishop, make sure that that knight at least needs like 3-4 tempes to reach to e6.
Yeah.
If black is given the chance to reach this position, then already black is kind of more comfortable.
Yeah, and does Carlsen's body language, I just took a peek at the screen, does his body language tell you anything, or it's just still too early to make a judgment about, you know, I always like looking to read the psychology of the players. And Magnus is a little bit hard for me to read because he makes a lot of faces, but I don't know, I don't feel like he's giving us his full thoughts. I think that I would be happy on the white side of this position against Vichy. I'm not saying he's going to win the game or anything like that, but I think that perhaps it gives him an opportunity to do the Magnus, which is what I like to call it.
I don't know. I mean, then he has to come up with some very good decision in the next 2-3 moves.
Yeah.
Because if you are not getting anything in the next 2-3 moves, then you are Magnus or you are not Magnus. It might not make any difference.
And the essential question I guess we're asking is, will he play d4, or will he perhaps castle, queen e2, and then maybe put this rook and then play d4? Because if black can't stop you from playing d4, perhaps it's not something you want to do right away. And in fact, instead of castling kingside, maybe queen e2 is useful to even consider castling long and playing d4 directly. But I definitely agree with you, especially if black can just castle and take control over this d4 square. I'm not seeing any sort of way to a clear path towards advantage for white that you can see in some other lines.
Well, usually I'm extremely happy in these positions with black, because, okay, all my life I have been playing such positions. And with white, I would not feel at such an ease. First of all, because you have to have a very special feeling for these positions. Yes. You have to have a lot of experience. You have had to analyze those type of positions move per move with engines a lot.
Yep.
And for me, with black, everything is so natural what I'm going to achieve. On the other hand, white is the one who is trying to prove something and get some game going. Yeah. Black is happy if he just equalizes and he's in time to neutralize everything. So in this aspect, I think that there is more pressure on Magnus right now in this certain moment.
Definitely agree.
That he has to come, but if he comes up with a good plan, then there might be a pressure on Vichy to how do I neutralize it.
And I guess a question I was going to have for you as a follow-up is, let's say I make this move queen e2. As black, how are you determining which side to castle on? Because when you castle long, that's when I immediately think, can I get my b4, a4, castle this way and start launching? And
yeah,
it's a bit of a long story, but
yeah,
you made the point.
But usually the idea is that black doesn't really need to castle until white is castling. Yeah, this is kind of a natural tendency. So the question is, can I make a useful move here?
I was thinking, can I bring this bishop here?
That would be a fair chance, because f6, bishop f7, knight e6 would be ideal, but it might take just one move too much.
Right.
And you might be, let's just illustrate this, f6, rook d1, and bishop f7 is met by d4. And now all of a sudden this f6, bishop f7 moves were very unfortunate.
Yeah, because even sometimes I can play a move like e5 and just continue breaking open the position in favorable ways where...
Yeah, I mean, okay, so f6 is not... Bishop d7 after queen e2 is quite interesting. Because then if rook d1 is met by knight e6, then the queen on e2 can also feel a little bit stupid.
Yep.
I mean, you're gonna go queen e3, and then black gonna play c6 c5, stopping d3 d4 once and for all.
Yep.
And then what is white's plan? Then you have to start shuffling your knight from c3 to don't know exactly where.
Yeah.
So usually the typical anti-Berlin positions are with the white knight on d2. Yeah. That's why this knight on c3 is very special, and Magnus has a lot of experience with it. For the first time he has used something like this against Alexeyev in 2018 Bill tournament, which is a legendary game, and Magnus squeezed out from opposite colored bishop position something, and then there was this moment when Karyakin needed to win with white against Onischuk in the Baku World Cup after losing the first game to Onischuk, and he chose exactly that line, and he went for this opposite colored bishop position, and he also managed to grind down Onischuk, and after the game he thanked Magnus on tweet. That thank you Magnus,
for showing me the way.
Yes, and that was 2008. It was still a very, very young Magnus, way ahead of his time, feeling that everyone else would have said that, you know what, this is the dead draw, why are you playing for a draw? But Magnus proved already back then that he had a very, very special feel for all these nuances.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, and that's why maybe I felt like I liked Magnus' chances, because we've seen his history, but history doesn't always indicate what's happening now, and I think this has been a particularly nice showing by Magnus in this tournament, because after all his draws in a row, people were getting a little bit flustered. He was likely getting upset, but then that win over Jordan kind of catapulted him with the next win over Mamadjarov, and he's been continuing the win over Report as well. So I like the way he's been playing, and I guess one other thing I'll think about here is queen to d2, which has a sort of sneaky threat of queen g5 hitting multiple pawns. But the reason I didn't like queen d2 was because I wanted to get my rook on d1 and play d4. So these little nuances are definitely worth investigating here. Actually, bishop d7 is not possible directly because of queen g5. And so f6 is the logical reply, but then it's the same question. Is f6 a move too slow, or is it okay to play f6 and
But we are not the only one who are in the dark, I mean, Magnus is also taking his time. It's not easy at all working out, because he really understands very well that if he's not using the momentum, then black will just be comfortable.
Right.
And also somehow his body language was kind of signaling that he knows the importance of this moment, and he was leaning towards the side like he's trying to remember something. That maybe did I look at this, was there some move per move idea, or do I have to think in general terms? So let's wait and see how he will deal with this.
Yeah, this feels like a game where it will be, I think the tension will be resolved in the next series of moves, because it's a big important decision by white to play d4, for black how to stop d4. The reason I tend to like white, I liked what you said though about with the white pieces, you should be playing for a win. That's how the chess mantra goes. But the reason why I like white's position is I don't really see clear-cut black plans yet. Okay, if this knight can replace his bishop on e6, I'm very happy. But until that happens, I'm liking white's position, but I could see myself in the next 6 moves just reversing course here and be like, okay, Peter was totally right. You're not getting anything, and if you're not getting something, you feel like you have to kind of mix things up and make it a little bit more interesting, right? But so far, not sure we're getting much here. Okay, this Dingley-Wren game caught my eye once more, because a lot of stuff has happened after the opening, and this g4 move, this is where we were talking about.
Yeah, g4, this is one of the only critical lines against this, because this bishop f5, knight e4 is the most principal way of trying to eliminate any kind of play. And white had been struggling big time to find an idea, and there was, for a very long time, I believe, because I haven't been playing this position for the last 20 years. I used to be a Grunfeld player in the 90s, so I played a lot of g3, c6 back then. But then it was different systems. However, I just out of curiosity, I took a look at this line, I don't know, 6-7 years back, and I spotted that there was only one game with g3, g4 back then. I think some Slovenian player played. I just don't want to say anything wrong, but I do believe like this. And then I have analyzed it, and it looked like, wow, it's quite interesting. And the game that comes to mind is the game between Rapport and Lichao in their World Cup encounter in the knockout last year in Tbilisi. I mean, not last year, 2017. Yeah. And there Rapport went for this G4, and I believe that game continued knight takes c3, b takes c3, bishop e6, because that's the way of keeping the pawn. But here it gets very sharp with all these f2, f4 ideas, because White's idea is very direct. He wants to kick back the bishop, I mean, go with f4, f5, and it was some very double-edged position. You really have to know your stuff out here. A very principled way by Mamedov just giving up the pawn, because after all g3, g4 is a very committal move in the future. And usually in all these exchanges on c6, the position opens up, it gets very tactical, and the pawn doesn't really have such a huge impact on the course of the game. The question is, can White keep his structure together also?
Right, and this move e3 protects both pawns at the same time, which is nice. But I think I'm going to let you and Sopiko start to figure this out. I've been told that we have a video with Vishy Anand that we'll play shortly. So once we get that video up, I will be being replaced by Sopiko. So that would be good to see that video of one of our co-leaders, a former world champion and a great player. So let's get that video going.
I'm very fortunate that chess gave me a lot in my life. For me, it's not only my career, it's the way through, it's the prism through which I experience everything. I've got to travel a lot, play everywhere, but mostly I'm very fortunate to do something that I love doing. Well, to prepare for this tournament, I try to arrive here in a good mood. You know, the new year, you want to start it well. I managed to take some walks, I've done some general work, so I think I'm well rested now, and tomorrow when the pairings are known, then it's more specific. I think my best move in life is usually connected with my family. So, you know, my marriage, the birth of my son, the special friends you make, these are the things that last you all your life.
There I am again. I want to thank Robert that he kept Anish's game for me, so you didn't have a look at that. And I'm really wondering what's going on, because I know something about this line. I had a video series on closed Sicilian, and the name was like winning with the closed Sicilian, so I'm afraid that Fedosiev looked the series. But I was wondering here, because in my series I am suggesting that after h3, castle, bishop e3, knight, rook b8 and f4, black has some kind of exactly knight e8, knight c7, b5 stuff in case of a4. There was a game of Maxim Vashilagraf, and the idea was that if white plays a4 and knight c7, then after b5, ab, knight b5, and it gets very complicated. But I don't know, what do you think? Knight d4 was played, castle and knight c7. How would you assess this position?
Well, it seems like Anish is also studying your video series. Yeah, I mean, first of all, I wanted to ask that you suggested the close Sicilian.
I suggested
as
different
an anti-Najdorf, because here we see an anti-Najdorf stuff. Yeah. That's how. Yeah, because the point is that once you notice that, I mean, after e4, c5, knight c3, black plays d6,
right? Because
he wants to play the Najdorf, and if he goes knight c6 here,
yeah, then knight f3 can be played, and you're out of your opening.
You cannot play the Najdorf anymore.
Yeah.
So basically, you play d6, then I'm gonna go knight g2, and yes, it's a slightly committal closed Sicilian because the knight is already on e2, so you cannot get those f4 things happening. Right. However, black is also kind of committing the knight to f6, so he doesn't get this usual g6, bishop g7, e6, knight e7 setups. So it's a very special one, and we have seen a lot of blitz games in all those Grand Chess tours.
Yeah.
Aronyan was also playing with white, I think, a lot of games in this structure. But those players, somehow, if I'm not mistaken, decided not to go with f4, but they played some castles, bishop g5, knight d5.
Yeah, there was one of that was one of the lines, and the line I suggested was not to come with bishop e3, but to start with h3, castle, and f4 right away without committing bishop on e3, because then knight d4 might have been annoying. But this is like very typical outcome of the...
Yeah. If those who wondered why knight e8 was necessary, because if b5 runs into e4, e5, oops, losing a piece, this is something one has to really watch out all the time in this line. And knight e8 is not only stopping this, but it's already rerouting itself to c7 and opens the long diagonal. Very natural. a4, knight d4, castles, knight c7. Usually I'm very happy with the black pieces in such position, but I'm not getting them, unfortunately.
Everybody goes for main line.
Yeah, and also I'm somehow hardly playing. That's another problem, yeah. But this one I would feel just very, very happy, because, I mean, okay, this is also how Anish has won all his games with black so far in this tournament. I mean, he has won 3 with black, that his opponent, because, okay, Anish is famous of being a very good theoretician. However, I think people are fooled by his this image.
Don't reveal the secrets.
But I think the tournament already proves it, you know.
Okay.
That whenever you go to those sidelines that let's just play chess, Anish is very happy.
Yeah.
I mean, he's looking forward to. It's not that...
Next black game will be horrible.
It will be a forced line, yeah. It will be a forced line, yeah. No freedom anymore. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be a very interesting fight, because Fedoseev started with -2 and clearly was not happy. He was somehow not settling into the tournament.
Right.
It's his kind of vacancy debut, but he has won 2 games now in a row. And he's that type of player who needs confidence. I mean, once he feels that things are going nicely, because he's playing this type of chess,
right,
where you really need a lot of energy, you have to believe in yourself, and once you are in a minus score, you tend to be pessimistic, and when you see that things are going my way, then all these double-edged, hard to assess positions, you just enjoy playing, because you feel like things are going my way.
Yeah, I agree with you. And there's going to be a big fight, I guess, on this board, because from my experience, why I suggested this type of lines was that, okay, yes, black has some play on the queen side and maneuvering, regrouping, but white also has his own trumps with g4, f5, which is a bit committal, because g4 sometimes is met with f5. If you go f5, then you... then e5 square is getting weak, so I expect a very, very big fight on this board.
And also basically what white is often saying that this is now an anti-Najdorf weapon, and usually the Najdorf players prefer other type of structures, and with bishop on g7 and without the pawn on e6, they don't feel so happy, but this is a completely different story when you play in the elite scene, because the elite players are capable of handling any type of position. So it's not like this that all my life I played the Najdorf and wow, if I'm not getting my Najdorf structure, then I'm doomed. Yeah. No, then the game just starts, and maybe you are even much more happy not to have gotten your Najdorf with all those bishop g5 lines.
Yeah, with very forced lines. And what caught my eye while you were with Robert was the game versus Vidit versus Kramnik. I guess this is the...
Wow, this is Chennai.
Yeah,
this
is outcome of Carlsen Anand match.
Wow.
Yeah. Probably we should start from the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, okay, this was Nimzo with f3. And I would like to congratulate Robert for his judgment before the game, that he said that he is really looking forward to this game between Vidit and Kramnik, because this will be something special.
Yeah, he guessed it right.
And indeed, it is something special. Both players are after blood. And already...
August, Robert.
Yeah, I mean, great, because there were so many big matchups coming, but Robert somehow said, you know what, you might laugh at me at the beginning, but I really believe that this might be the game of the day. And we get a very sharp stuff. This is the f3 Nimzo with c5, and CD-ED.
Yeah.
This is not a typical... first of all, why I was hesitant, because I think after F3, if Vidit plays F3 Nimzo against Kramnik, then he might first need to make sure that against C7, C5 he's prepared, because Vlad has played it himself. Of course, I'm pretty sure that Vlad had played a lot of setups, but I'm not sure that many players were really entering F3 against him. I recall the match against Anand in Bonn, 2008, and he also had then later 2010 a game against Shirov, where he already played with C5 in Shanghai. So they play now this line, when after CD, instead of the classical knight takes d5, which after d takes c5, seen that game between Anand and Kramnik, it was the f5 line.
Yes, it was f5.
Yeah, it was, so you know a lot, yeah?
I played myself at this f3. I don't know a lot, but I played, I prepared it for my World Championship cycle. So I had this exact CD-ED line with e3 and g4 in the rapid tie-break against Sarasadat. And it went well for me. So when I see f3, I'm like, oh, that's it. I'm very excited when I see f3. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, it leads to very interesting positions. My old good friend Ferenc Belkes, he was a big lover of the F3 Nimzo systems, and whenever he was coming to Szeged to have some training with me, then we played tons of games and for different systems. So I know also at some point I got excited from the wide game to play F3 Nimzo, but it's also so much work and so much trouble, because whenever you look from the white side, then it seems like all the lines work for black. But when you have to pick a line with black, then suddenly none of the lines really is that easy. So it's really critical. Yeah, and g4, knight a5, bishop g2, knight b3.
Exactly the game of from the match, Anand Carlsen. And this was actually the last game, if I'm not mistaken, where Anand had real chances to come back, but he drew this game, and with this game he lost the match.
Yeah, and actually it was very, very special, because Vichy was 2 points behind, and if he would win this game, then he would be very much back in the fight. And we all know those World Championship matches, if things get out of control, it can put a lot of pressure on the opponent. And we had been playing all the match e4, and that was basically the part of the preparation for the match. But it was at that point already clear that Vichy has to switch to d4, because we were not getting anywhere in d4, and we had something like 20-30 hours of time without any sleep to make a full-fledged d4 repertoire, because we didn't even know what Magnus is up to. So we kind of spent all our energy into d4, and Nimzo was clear that if Nimzo, then we're gonna try the f3 stuff. And of course, if you start building up a repertoire from the white side, then this line of CD-ED is your least concern.
Yes.
Because first of all, it's very rare. Secondly, it suits to our approach that we are trying to play all in this game. So ED5 wasn't really checked. However, what was really like a terrible feeling for me, that I did know this idea of E3-4, that this is dangerous for white. And then Vichy in similar position was hesitant, and then he didn't go for E3-4. And I had this feeling that, if we would have had a little bit more time, and I would have added to the file this ED5 structure, because I had kind of some knowledge about this line, then maybe this whole match could have taken a completely different turn. Don't get me wrong, E3-4 is not a winning. I'm not even sure if this is exactly the exact position, but it's a very, very dangerous pawn sacrifice.
It's the move which you need when you want to come back, when you're -2 and you really want to come back. You want to get such sharp position.
Yeah, but the problem was, I think Vichy was facing that he also understood that by just playing normal with knight g3 and then g5, e4, he also gets all in position. So he didn't felt that this is a necessity that he goes e3 for now. But in that concrete position, that was very dangerous. And and actually here it looks also very dangerous. Unfortunately, we are not getting the times.
Yeah.
It would have been so nice to know who has spent how much time. But look at this position. I'm just, I'm just loving this for white.
Yeah.
I'm almost, maybe it's objectively not correct, but I would just say that white almost looks winning to me.
I think this is what my file also goes like this with e4 and bishop g4 when I was preparing for the match against Sarah, and it's lovely to see how engines are evaluating this one, because you're pawn down and you're sacrificing maybe one more, but it does not show like there's minus, and it's very nice line, I would think, for white, and black needs to be very precise to get out of the attack.
Yeah, I mean, black is pawn up, but when you look at this position, you even don't realize that black is pawn up.
Yeah.
It seems like white is dominating
Yes.
all the board, but pawn is a pawn, and it's one thing that it looks nice, but what to do with this whole beauty. So e5 98, white to move. Okay, so many possibilities. I don't know. I mean, how could Kramnik exactly? But he's risking so much.
He is
kind of in every game. He's kind of provoking, inviting his opponent.
Yeah, yesterday was also a very lucky escape for him when Dinglieren just blundered, and then it's turned into a drawing position. But what I'm interested, and I really want to ask you, is when you're analyzing from the beginning, it's move 19 already, and if you have time, then you would not stop at this position, right? But if you don't have so much time, is it the position where would you stop and think that, okay, I'm gonna play it on the board because I have lots of options, it looks very nice, and that's not gonna stop me from playing it?
Yeah, well, I mean, basically it also depends what the computer evaluation is.
Right.
Because when you believe that you have a nice position, but the engine insists that you are worse, then you feel like you have to continue until you prove it to the computer that, you know, my friend, you are almost always right, but now you got it wrong. And unfortunately, these things happen less and less frequently. It used to be so much fun fighting against Fritz in the end of 90s and beginning of 2000s, and you really had a fair chance of punishing him. But now with the new engines and new processors, I mean, the computer has also got just much faster. Yeah. So it's all connected. Now if the computer insists that black is fine or black is better, then you have to make sure. But if it gives, for example, 0-0, then you immediately feel like, okay, I don't have the luxury of spending so much time with this position. There are like a million other problems I have to deal with. So let's just assume I like the position, computer has nothing against it, let me play it.
Yeah, so that might be the position where if you don't have time, yes, it looks nice. So if engines is saying 0, let's go for it.
Basically, this is what I have noticed, that there is a very big difference between modern chess and like a chess 20 years ago even. That 20 years ago, whenever you studied the line and opening, you really devoted so much time to it to understand all the nuances of it, because somehow you didn't felt like there is so much other things to do. You always knew that, yeah, I have to take care of 2-3 more openings, but somehow everything was under control. Nowadays, you hardly have any time of really working out a system, because previously, if you wanted to pick up the Najdorf, you spent like 1 month with it. Yeah. And you kind of knew that without spending 1 month on the Najdorf, you just cannot even think about playing the Najdorf. And nowadays, if you even think that, wow, should I spend 5 days or 1 week with Najdorf? I don't have this time.
Yeah.
And so it's all much more dynamic, and people cannot really focus on one specific line so deeply.
Yeah, that is true. We don't have that luxury anymore. It just became very concrete with these engines, so you really have to be precise. Though in this position, I think, do you think that white has to prove something very quickly, or he has time to regroup and create something on the king side or in the center.
Well, I think that who has to prove something here is black.
Right.
I mean, black is the one who has to prove how he gonna handle white's initiative, because that's one of the problems I see in this position, that even if black is kind of given 3-4 moves, what you gonna do with those moves? The only thing that comes to mind is when black gets, for example, knight c7, bishop e6, and would be able to blockade with d5 or something on d5. But this is not gonna happen. I mean, even natural moves like queen e3 are happening. White can also then consider later pushing d4, d5 against knight c7, and then the knight on c7 will feel very, very awkward. I mean, so many plans for black. I don't know. I would be really, really scared.
Yeah, it looks like a very interesting game, and Robert once again was very much correct to guess it. And we see that Vladimir is not. He's not very happy.
But something happened, yeah? Then already white made a move. I mean, he is the one who is thinking, no?
Yeah, he's the one who is thinking, and I think queen e3 was played because I see the queen on the board.
This move was so tempting.
Yeah, it was
so inviting.
Screaming.
Yeah, exactly, to be played. And queen e3. All my thoughts were also connected with queen e3. That what black gonna do now?
Queen e3, queen. Would you place queen
and
to
g3?
hang
on, because now we have seen, as Lovet also said, I also like to look at the players,
yeah.
and the way Kramnik put his hand and holding his head, somehow he signals to me like, how did I ended up in this? Why did I ended up in this? I could have chosen at least 10 other lines which he knows perfectly against the f3 Nimzo, and he probably just wanted to counter surprise with it.
Yeah.
However, I think for Indian chess players, that game of Chennai was really, during the game, giving them a lot of hope, because I think the match could have been completely wide open if Vishy wins that game. So I can imagine the attention the Indian players were giving to that game. And if you analyze that game and you have this e3, e4 idea in mind, then you will never forget it.
Yeah, of course. And Vidit seems to be pretty happy. He's walking. To me, he looks pretty relaxed. Probably he's still in the book. And before we go to another game, I would just ask you, would you put your queen to g3, or do you think that queen really belongs there? Because to my mind, I'm always thinking like, oh, can I create something on g-file because it's open?
Well, I think now, as a white player, you just played queen e3 and you are enjoying your momentum, and you really want to wait for black's move, because black has such a difficult decision to make. Right. I mean, there are all kinds of threats coming on the king side in the center. White can even have the luxury of just moving the king to h1, maybe play rook g1, but even that is not necessary. Somewhere knight h5 might be a move if black goes with knight c7, and then some knight h5, knight f6 checkmate ideas are also appearing. So even some thoughts that came to mind is a radical solution of playing some rook b6 and just put the rook to h6 in order to guard the king somehow, and also the only vulnerable pawn white has is this h3 pawn.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, let me get the rook there, but I mean, this rook b6 looks also so unnatural.
Yeah.
In order to make this, you really also kind of feel like things have gone completely out of control, and okay, just before it gets worse, I'm gonna put it there and see what happens.
And before I let you go, I actually want to take a look at the game of Maksudlu Barham versus Barev. What is this? What the queen is doing on h8? Because this is something crazy. We probably need to take a look at it from the beginning, because I don't get it from where it happened.
Well, I have seen the first move, so I know very well that it happened from this Caro-Kann with g4, bishop g6, knight g2, c5, h4, a line which was kind of abandoned in the last 15 years, I would assume, because white was fighting with completely different ideas, the Caro-Kann, and I'm wondering whether poor Yevgeny faces this problem that when he has been playing the Caro-Kann, and he was one of the leading experts in all these lines, and then this h5 knight f4 bishop h7 line was considered to be kind of the refutation. But now with all these new technologies and new possibilities, maybe White came up with some totally different new concept, and this is what we are seeing here. In all times, White was taking on h5, and Black gave the pawn but gained time and would get very nice counterplay on the queen side and breaking up the center. So g5 is of course kind of played, knight c6, queen takes h5. It's not that 15 years ago people would not understand that this is interesting or dangerous, but I mean, where does it lead? After knight takes d4, it looks like if you are not winning immediately with White, you are just losing.
Yeah, but equipped with engines, once again, you can play it.
Exactly, and you just continue, because, for example, I don't know what computer says, but computer insists that, you know, after knight takes c6, lot of fun starts, and you see all kinds of zeros, for example.
That's very nice to have it.
Yeah, not necessarily the engine gives pluses, but whenever you see that this position, which is so interesting and sharp, gives you hope to continue your work, then you automatically get excited and you continue. Yeah, White has sacrificed the piece, but the Black king is stuck in the center now, and White follows it up with g6. Now again, we only see the time now at the final position that we have now, and we see Max Todlu having 1:23 versus 20 minutes. We can probably safely assume that this all had been quite a shock and quite some big surprise on Yevgeny.
For Barev, yeah, that's horrible position to face over the board.
Yeah.
All the time you calculate something and moves like knight e6, g6 are coming.
Yeah, but on the other hand, you know, this is also a typical stuff that sometimes you are just wondering, because now things have changed. Black has sacrificed the rook, and he's now exchanged down, but has a lovely position. And Barev could, for example, in this moment, really believe that, you know, I understand you are prepared. I believe a lot of computers moves will be coming in the next couple of moves, but I'm actually happy with my position. However, over the board without engine's evaluation, you just cannot evaluate these positions correctly. So he continues playing principal d takes c3, rook d1, queen c7, and we have a total mess.
Yeah, we do. And for me, first thought when I am prepared and I know what are the next moves, but my opponent surprises me, first feeling is like, whew, okay, so that's not the engine's first move. But then the problem is, okay, so I don't know the move, so I have to somehow punish it. And this is like very difficult position, but what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, I have no idea what's going on. I mean, it's not even clear if this is objectively good for White or is it a bluff or whatever. I mean, it can be anything.
So many things. Rook d7 also is one of the possibilities that...
Yeah, but it feels like if you go rook d7, I am really happy with Black, because somehow I have already forgotten that you have a queen on h8. You know? This is so far away from action. And by the way, just taking on d7, but I can even include maybe c takes d2. I mean, I'm just so happy. I don't believe that White has any right giving up his active, dangerous pieces. But on the other hand, also queen takes e5, check is a threat, rook d8 is kind of coming. I mean, what is happening?
And for now, it's not even an exchange, right? It's two minor pieces for the rook. So if I give up my rook, then I'm having three pieces for the queen, though I can take on g8.
Yeah, and also this nice little pawn on c3, it's really irritating, because what White doesn't want to do to lose tempo.
Right.
but I mean, you also don't want to see a pawn on b2.
Yeah,
because
scary.
Whenever the pawn gets on b2, then Black can always sacrifice the queen and it will all be good. What White is really missing right now is a knight.
Right.
I mean, a knight on d5 would decide the game. almost it would have been better not to be able to, yeah, actually, if you remove the queen from h8 and you give a knight to e3 and you play knight d5 check,
yeah,
okay, there is still king d8, but I mean, yeah, knight would be really what you need in this position. Now that you don't have it, again, taking on g8, you don't want to take this knight just because of the knight. You would like to take it because you can connect it with an attack.
Yeah.
But somehow I'm not seeing this queen getting... now, by the way, we are in Holland. Then maybe I can announce, I mean, I can say this, that there is this game, Stratego, that I used to play as a kid, and I know that it's very, very popular in Holland.
Oh, wow.
And this position reminds me of Stratego, because exactly there you have those things that your pieces are running behind the enemy's line, and you hit something there, but you cannot continue, you will be bombed. I mean, you will run into a bomb and things like this.
Well,
I mean,
I don't know that game, but Leonard does. He's like, yeah, that's the game.
It's a fascinating game, and I have also implemented there the Fischer random version of the Stratego, because I mean the point of already 20 years ago, simply that I love to play Stratego, but I was working like 10 hours on chess, so I never had time to play the Stratego by. I mean, Stratego is like this, a board game that you have 40 pieces. I mean, all kinds of marshals, generals, bombs, spies, and all kinds of stuff. And you have to place all your 40 pieces, and your opponent doesn't see your pieces. You only see your pieces, and you don't see your opponent's pieces. So you are kind of in a blindfold spot. But you have, I mean, I'm not perfectly know the English name of all those soldiers, but it's like this, and then placing, however, those 40 soldiers takes too much time, because you make it's like always already playing an opening. So I decided that okay, just forget it, close your eyes, and you start putting your pieces wherever you want.
Whoa,
here we have. That's the Stratego exactly, and it's just a fantastic game. And the point
seems very difficult.
Yeah, very difficult. But the point of this Fischer random version was that if your flag, which is the most important part, because that's the checkmate, if you reached your opponent's flag, is by accident in the first row, so immediately at the direct clash of the scene, then you can change that one piece. And you can place it somewhere. But otherwise, it's just Fischer random, and there we go.
Wow.
Please check this game out. It's fantastic. And this position, I mean, it's a typical Stratego. You don't know.
Now I understand what you mean.
Yeah, I mean, you simply don't know what's happening, because you are not sure exactly which piece is what of your opponent. Can you take it? Maybe it's a bomb.
Yeah.
And here also, I'm a chess expert, but I have no clue. Is white winning? Is black winning? Is it unclear? Maybe it's 0-0. No clue whatsoever.
Yeah, but it's great game to follow for the spectators, because you never know what's gonna happen, and you just trust this two players and you're having fun.
Yeah, but now also black is starting to play rook d8. I mean, I don't know. I'm a little bit scared, to be honest, for Parham, because if his preparation has ended, and for example this position is just totally unclear, then over the board I feel that it's much easier now to play with black.
Yeah. Over the board, I definitely agree with you, though Barev has 20 minutes for 22 moves, which might become a bit of a problem because it's very, very complicated position. And Parham has luxury of spending an hour, because he's kind of he has an hour and 16 minutes on the clock, which is very, very
but you know, this is typical. If for example you have been following a preparation, and then finally the preparation ends somewhere and it's a total chaos, then even if you have 2 hours time, you can easily spend all of it just to sort it out. What is this jungle I got myself into? And it happened already so many times that someone who was like 1 hour ahead on the clock ended up in a terrible time trouble, and then people ask him, okay, what were you doing? Well, I didn't finish my homework, because it's simply not that you are lazy, there is just not enough time, and also you don't know what to expect.
Right.
Whenever you feel like I have already some interesting idea, then you tend to lean towards that, okay, I'm happy that I have an idea.
Right.
In modern chess, we know that how many positions we have where we don't have an idea. So we are happy. On the other hand, I always felt like it's a pity that if you have a very good idea, a great novelty, but it's way too complicated, and if it happens exactly in the moment when you are not expecting it to happen, you didn't rehearse, for example, your analysis, and can you imagine you make the novelty of the year, and you end up losing that game.
Oh.
Exactly. I mean, and then all the world knows it, and all the world knows that actually your idea is very good. You could have won with it, but you have lost.
Oh, that's terrible.
It's
that
the worst thing, yeah.
Really bad. Wow, amazing games, and thank you very much for your insights. I won't take more time from you. We will have a little break, and then we'll be back with Grandmaster Robert Hess.
I'm back.
Back. Welcome back. That's great to have you next, but Peter is also amazing.
I don't know how to replace him because I heard you two talking about Stratego.
Yeah.
And I was so caught off guard that he was such a big Stratego fan. So
yeah, he is amazing. And he knows so many things. And I was blushed when he told me, like, oh, you know many things. I'm like, oh, that's a compliment.
I heard that too. I wasn't surprised that he said that, but I did hear it because you were talking about the game from Chennai.
Yeah, I was there at that moment. And actually, it was very interesting because he told us the insights. He was working for Vichy, right? As I guessed from what he was telling, that he explained us that we were working on this line and we thought it would work. If I had more time to prepare this E4, then maybe the match would be totally different. It's just amazing to hear stories, inside stories.
Yeah, it is. And I'm just glad that he also acknowledged that my prediction of that being the game of the day. Thank you. Oh, they're all going to spam it now. But that was my predictions being game of the day in the Masters. I mean, I'm going to pull that game up because just, you know, it's not the number one. I guess we can talk about the standings for a quick second here because it's not the number one game for the leaderboard.
Right.
But as we see in the standings here, we had we had the standings and they went to just no.
No.
Because those are not the...
It's not the standings.
Those are the standings before the tournament went to Leiden.
Yeah. Now we have 10th round.
Aha, then we have the pairings here.
Yeah. We have Magnus versus Vichy Anand, which I call the game of the day. I don't know if it's more interesting than the Vidit and Kramnik.
Definitely not.
But from standing point of view, it is very important match because these two are the leaders of the tournament, half point ahead of Ding Liren. Jan Nepomniachtchi also joined the leaders, I guess, right?
Yes, that's right.
Vichy and Magnus, who is playing Jordan van Forest. Fedosiev won yesterday.
I cannot believe that.
Amazing game. We left. We said that there's nothing to commentate because it should be a draw. There is no other way. But I was in Italian restaurant and I was just looking at it and I see that he went into this pawn end game where he missed king d6 and I was like, oh, will he find king d6? And just in 2 seconds, the guy plays king d6.
Heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And that game, if you go on chess.com/news, you can see the report there with the move-by-move analysis, I believe, or at least for the end of the game. But yeah, today we have a different story.
Right.
And we see that, look at Magnus being
the boss.
Yeah, king of the castle, in a sense. Kind of an awkward photo, I'm not going to lie. It's fun to see it, though. And he looks good, though.
Oh, yeah. Actually, yeah. If I look at the picture, I was like, "Oh yeah, that's the guy. That's the guy."
So just a nice little funny photo before the round. So I think Magnus feels uncomfortable with it. That's what the vibe I'm getting. You know, he doesn't want to be on top of it anymore. He just wants to kind of stand next to his colleagues and competitors. But alas, that's them in Leiden. Here we see Magnus at the board. I'll pull up his game because things have happened.
Oh, many things. Actually,
I was discussing this game with Peter, and we were talking. Actually, it was the last move I had said because we were talking about either queen e2 or castling, but queen d2 made a lot of sense coming for a double attack, which Vichy met with the immediate knight d7, saying, "Okay, you better play d4 now because if you don't, I'm going to play c5 and control the square." So all these trades happen.
So I was wondering if I played instead of knight d7 f6 to cover the g5 square, you would go d4 or
either
castle.
Yeah, decide if I want to castle or put the rook on d1 or d4 right away. All of the moves are certainly options, and it's what we were talking about.
Yeah.
We're unsure. So you're putting me on the spot again. I wish I could tell you.
Okay. So let's get to the actual game. What happened? Knight d7. A lot of things happened in the center, and I love this fe. and trading the queens.
Do you love this king takes d2?
I like it.
Yeah.
I really like it.
It's classy.
It reminds me a bit of the moment when Magnus went king d2 in his match versus Anand. And that was the moment when I was commentating with Peter Svidler, and we just decided that, okay, we will have a break, and then we see the blunder.
Yeah.
Knight e5. We see the blunder and we're like, hey, get us back because this is the moment. But amazing that not only that Anand didn't find it, but he just played a4 so fast that he did not even take a moment for that. And then he said that, yeah, you don't expect such gift from Magnus, right? This is not the case, of course, but the move king d2 just reminded me that moment.
It's sort of strange, right? Because rook takes d2, followed by rook to d1 is just, feels so logical.
Yeah.
So obvious in a sense. But Magnus, understanding that his king belongs in the center, takes on d2 with the king, plays f4, and then brings the king back. So now black cannot castle queenside. And so that is one thing gained. If black could castle queenside a move ago, which is of course is possible, once his king comes to e2, now the knight's not doing anything on c4, I'll play b3 and kick it out. So the essential thing about this position as we get to the game is we have a 4-on-3 on the king side, and black's 4-on-3 on the queen side is not very good because of double pawns.
Yeah, I agree with you. What I'm confused about is this knight e5 right away move. I would think that if knight e5 followed by f4, I would love to have knight e5 if there was no f4 and if it was outpost for me, right? So I would think, I don't know if it's possible, but I would think moves like long castle or g5 just to secure the e5 square, or rook f8. Why knight e5 when you know that f4 will come? Or it was a provocation?
Yeah, I guess in a way it's a provocation, but I don't know if it's a provocation that you should be happy about, because as the game has continued to go, Knight King's b3, all of Magnus's moves are pretty natural here.
Yeah.
He's taking advantage of the fact that this knight has been jumping around the board. If it comes to e3, it may not live to see many more moves, because after rook to d2...
Ooh, yeah. That's not...
I don't know where that knight's getting out. And so if it goes backwards to d6, maybe I play e5 with the tempo. Maybe I do something like g4 and eventually continue to expand. White's position is certainly favorable here. It's essentially, some people say it's playing with an extra pawn, even though the material is equal, because your 4-on-3 can start moving, while this 4-on-3 for black on the queen side is sort of stuck. So I like Magnus's position a lot here. I was kind of anticipating something like this to happen, but I'm surprised to see it happen so quickly.
I agree with you, and I think that there's a lot of things will happen in this position. From one side, you might think, oh, this is an endgame, it's going to be boring, but this is not the boring one, because it is the one where we will see who has the great technique.
Yes. And I think we know that Magnus has some pretty good technique, and
it's not bad.
Vishy's technique is unbelievable. And what I really like about Magnus is he's able to sort of pull advantages, like, you know, they pull a rabbit out of a hat.
Right.
Magnus pulls advantages out of a hat. And he's not wearing a hat, so I guess this doesn't really work here. But he is just able to get advantage out of thin air. It's oftentimes people think, oh, the position's level, and then 5 moves later, whoa, this is actually getting really interesting. So I will be curious to see what Vishy does this knight on c4, and how he continues.
A thought to add, what I like for Vishy is that after knight c4, maybe this was his idea to provoke b3, because after b3 he can play, I don't know, knight d6 c4 or knight b6 c4 just to get rid of this doubled pawns. So in a way, maybe that was kind of a provocation.
Yeah, another one, right? So first f4 and then b3, and that makes a lot of sense, because if you can play c4 and get rid of your double pawn for an undouble pawn, then your pawn majority actually can really make some moves on the queen side. But yeah, not the most electric game we're seeing in the round, because I'm looking around the boards here. I see that my game of the day between Vidit and Kramnik,
this is amazing.
That is awesome, because well, it's awesome for Vidit. I don't like Kramnik's position at all here.
It is, and I think it is very much in style of Vidit, because there are some players who really love such kind of things, and there are players like, okay, I just prefer that everything is on right place. I have I'm not pawn down and so on. But I think that this is going to be very tough for Vladimir, because Vidit really loves such positions.
Yeah, and Vidit's down a pawn, so he had to acknowledge Kramnik's material advantage.
Yeah.
And this pawn on a3 can also be captured at any moment. But what I see is this pawn on d6, protected by a pawn on e5, which means that a knight can come to e7 with check. I can double in the f file, come after your king by taking on f7. There are ideas of knight f6 check,
right,
kind of breaking everything open. Bishop e4 to bring another piece into the game.
Though I have a feeling that he has to be quick with the attack, because if he doesn't do anything, he doesn't have luxury of preparing all these things, because knight on e6 is a great piece.
Right.
It really defends the g7 pawn and the king very well. It stops the e5 and d6 pawn, and if black is in time to get a pawn, then he will have his own ideas. Rook a3, rook a2, and then some active rook on file, which can be exchanged with the bishop.
Mm-hmm.
Bishop c6 might come, so it's not completely one side, right?
I definitely agree with you, yes. And actually that's a very good idea that you just pointed out, that rook takes a3. Not only does it take a pawn, but this idea with the exchange sacrifice. White's king is wide open, and very importantly, this diagonal is essential to the position. So if I had several moves in a row, even if I don't take this pawn on a3, if I could make one move, I would play rook takes g2.
Oh, yeah.
Right? If you just give up this rook for the bishop, then play bishop c6, and all of a sudden black's position looks excellent. But that's not going to happen. I don't imagine that Vidit's going to wait around and let this rook capture. You can always put your bishop on e4, as I mentioned before. And I don't know, something tells me that white should be able to break through. I don't see it.
I think that his great chance is on h-file, because I see that knight e7, king h8, and then something like rook h5, rook h7 sacrifices, or queen e4, and something on h-file should happen, because knight on e7 is such a great piece. You just can mate him.
I'm trying to just emphasize what you said, because it's a great point, that even if, I don't know, something like this kind of checkmate is awesome. Right, where the knight covers the escape squares and the queen delivers checkmate. So, of course, I just forced that to happen.
Yeah, but that's not going to happen, but this is one of the ideas for white, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And actually it ties together very nicely with this bishop e4, rook h5 idea, because it also, with knight e7 check, I don't know. I'm very concerned about a position like this for Kramnik. Again, perhaps everything in his head sees that the position is okay.
Yeah.
But from the look of the position,
yeah, I don't know. I would definitely choose to be with white pieces. Although, if I had to choose, like, this Armageddon time control, if you take white, you have like 1 minute less.
Yeah.
And if you take black, you have this 1 minute. I think that is very important, because it's not so obvious.
Right.
And white has to be a bit careful also.
Yes, and queen h4.
Ugh. What is that?
Queen, it's
against rook h5.
I guess so. And that way, when knight e7 check comes, at least your queen is out in an open position that can maybe somehow help.
Yeah,
I feel like rook f1 is such a logical response here.
Yeah.
You're the same as me. You're stumbling over your words because you.
Yeah, I cannot really see. Well, I understand queen h4 is against rook h5, but if I just want to kick this queen out, I can play queen e2 and rook h5 anyway. But I don't mean that this is good.
But actually, what you were saying earlier, this ties together very well, because let's say I get something like this, or I even throw in this check first, but okay, rook h5. Maybe there's some hope with knight a4. That's like the one thing that may keep black in this game. But just to show exactly the variation you were talking about before.
Oh, yeah.
Seems even more inviting with queen on h4.
Yeah, this probably won't happen. But queen h4 is a risky move.
I would play this immediately.
Yeah.
No, not immediately because he has plenty of time, but if this was a blitz game or bullet game,
yeah.
I'm playing rook b to f1 and saying you figure out what's going on here because it looks like black is just getting crushed, honestly.
Yeah, because after rook f1, actually there is a threat of knight e7 and rook f7, right? Mm-hmm. So if rook a3 happens, what are you going to do after knight e7, rook f7?
Yeah, one good thing is that the knight covers the f8 square.
Yeah.
That's the one and probably the only good thing. I mean, perhaps you can just create some sort of counterplay here.
I was even wondering knight g6, hg, and rook d7, but
that
this is
good.
Too risky, I think.
Perhaps, ooh, nope, that might be a blunder because
right.
But I want to just mate you. I don't know how to make it happen, but I want to deliver some kind of checkmate.
I guess knight f5 is a very valid option.
Knight f5. I am worried about these pawns all
yeah, it is, but we are threatening to take the bishop.
Oh,
that's I like somehow.
That's very true. But somehow feels, is there something...
Yeah, somehow feels like we kind of slip, like it slips away.
Right. So I wonder if there's maybe this queen e2 move now?
Too slow?
Yeah, it could be too slow. I just wanted to do this checkmate.
Yeah.
But I guess it's not happening quickly enough.
Yeah, what I don't like is that after queen e2, maybe he can even take on c3, and after rook h5, he has this annoying check also, or knight f4.
Yeah.
Yeah, knight f4, rook f4, right? And we have the same.
Well, what I was thinking is after here, the queen will be able to...
Oh, that's nice.
Just barely.
That's very nice.
The queen comes back.
Yeah.
To defend the checkmate.
Yeah.
But...
And I see a question, what's wrong with the queen f3 in that line? Directly?
It was, I think it was this rook takes, it was the line with rook takes f7. So rook f7, takes, and b4, queen f3, and after check, bishop f1. Oh.
That's interesting. Rook f8 is the threat with the mate, yeah? And queen a8. Ooh, wow.
Sometimes it's funny, you know, and actually this is a great point about calculation in general.
Right.
When we calculate in our heads, we come to a conclusion a position's good for us or it's not good.
Yeah.
And then we stop. So let's say we calculate for 4 moves. We're like, okay, after this 4-move sequence, I don't like my position, Sopiko's position is better.
yeah.
But you calculate a half move further and be like, oh, maybe this is continued variation. That's how you get better at chess, is continue to challenge yourself to go one move further.
Always ask yourself that, okay, I see the position, I took the decision, but maybe there is one more move. And it's not that difficult, actually, because it's just one more move. Just to look a bit, one more move, because it really feels that, okay, something's going to happen here.
Yep. And, well, that looks like it's pretty much going to be a forced mate. I don't see how you stop all these threats here. There's no more checks. That looks really bad.
Yeah, that doesn't look good. And all right, what's going on? Because I've heard that little Pragnananda, who is the youngest player in the B group, is beating the leader of the tournament, Maxim Chigaev.
Well, as I pull up the position here, white is just up a pawn.
Okay.
And that's a pretty clean pawn.
Yeah. And it's 3 against 1 on queen's side. That gives me lots of hopes.
Yeah, looks good.
It's really, it does look good.
And how did we get here? I did not see really any of this game, but I did hear that it was going well for Pragnananda. See, I feel more confident every day.
You're getting better.
I'm getting there. And take on c6. Okay, this opening oftentimes is nice for white because, yes, black has this good-looking center, but white gets earlier piece play. Right. You're dynamic. Look at your bishop staring at the king side. You can play e5 to gain space. And if black ever takes on e4, then you're left with these weaknesses on the queen side. Bless you.
Sorry.
I have forgiven you already.
Thank you.
Oh boy, G6. That just feels like an invitation for attack.
Oh yeah.
Because as soon as I see G6, I want to play F5. And takes.
I agree with you. Ooh, of course. Why G6? That was really inviting.
Yeah. This is too accommodating because after pawn takes F5, that's not a free bishop. As this sort of trade here will leave you in a horrible way.
Yeah, that is something you don't want to have on board. If Miss Strategy was here, oh, she would start her, oh, look at these pawns, it's so awful, this A6, D5, F5, it's double pawns on F5. Yeah, I love when she's doing that, and I'm always like, oh, but tactics, oh, come on.
I have to be a little bit more lively. That's what I get what you're telling me. Yeah. How could you possibly have these double pawns in the F? It's so hideous, and it's just so bad for your position, structurally ruined.
Right.
Okay, I see where I have to go here. So D4 was the attempt to get out of it. Bishop D3 played. Looks like, okay, we're just aiming for checkmate. If you take here, probably just something like bishop takes back. There's also rook takes F6 as an option. Right, just
with
rook
Queen
F6,
H5.
Queen H5. But, okay, if I take this
Tactics.
way...
Once again.
Everything is just going White's way. So, Queen C6, Knight E4. So, trading off the queens. I mean, it's something...
Yeah.
It feels like there's something happening.
Yeah, only good thing is that the bishop on b7 and queen c6 ties my queen on e2, so I cannot get rook f6, bishop f6, and queen h5 because I would be mated.
Right.
But yeah, what was in the game, knight e4, looks good.
Yeah, but I just have this feeling there's something more direct. Yeah. I don't know. It seems like this trade, while it's good for white, because already I'm threatening bishop h6, rook g. For example, you defend your pawn here, I give you a check. Or actually, the move order is probably this way first. I give you a check. King only has one move. I give you this check, and your king is left going in harm's way.
And actually, I see that we are having 20K viewers.
Just under. Maybe we're at there, but to me, it looks like we're just around 20,000. I'm glad to see everyone here.
Yeah,
joining us.
Thank you very much. But my goal is to get to 25. Come on, guys. It is the game of Vichy versus Magnus. It cannot be 20 again. Yeah. 25. Let's go, people.
Yep. And just to explain to everyone what this this game is here. This is the Challenger section, where the winner of this tournament qualifies for the Masters section next year. And as you see the Challenger section standings, Maxim Chigayev is in first place with 6.5 and 9. He's the player with the black pieces here. Praggnanandhaa is at 4-9, so he's all the way down to 11th. But this is huge for the top of the leaderboard. Esipenko, Kovalyev are rooting for Chigayev to lose this game, and that way Praggnanandhaa gets a nice win, a nice victory for him in his career. And Maxim Chigayev is desperately trying to survive in this game.
Yeah, and this is very important game, as you mentioned, for the tournament standings. And of course, we have lots of interesting games in challengers. One game was already finished. Elizabeth Betts versus Dinara Sadvokasova. Peaceful ladies match with a draw. And rest day for them tomorrow as well. And what's going on actually in the game of Anand versus Magnus?
That's a great question. I'm going to take us right there because that game, of course, is the heavyweight match for the day. Two co-leaders. And, well...
Things changed.
Things changed a bit because this pawn has gone to e5 and this knight has found... It's not quite an outpost because g4 will come to kick it at some point, but it's found new squares to work with. It can jump over to d4. Using that c5 pawn, but white can always kick it out of c3. So where is this knight going to find its home? That's the question.
Yeah, that's a great question, and it is tough to answer because I would love actually to have my knight on d5. So my idea is to have my knight on d5, provoke c4, and then get to d4.
Ah, I see what you're doing. So what you want essentially is, okay, let's try to make this happen. If I play a move like a3, knight e3.
Yeah.
And then rook d2. You said, okay, I want now to get to d4.
Yeah.
So if I give you everything that you're looking for, then your knight is going to find an outpost in the d4 square.
Yeah, but that's a bit of a dream, right? I'm
Yeah.
really dreaming, because white won't sit just like this and allow me to do all the moves.
I think white, if I'm playing with the white pieces, I'm very tempted to go for g4.
Yeah.
And then eventually play f5. Where's this knight going?
Oof, I don't
To
know.
h4?
Looks awful.
Well, if I go to e3, I'm worried that here, knight d5, and maybe even f5.
Yeah,
'Cause-
I don't know. It looks. I love this pawn on e5 actually, because mostly in middle game, e5 pawn is great, because you gain space and you have your pieces not under it. How to say, behind it? Behind it, yeah.
Yep.
And it is great because you have attacking chances, like we see in Vidit's game, this pawn on e5, then knight e4, knight f6, knight d5, knight d7, those are the ideas. But I was always told, be careful with the e5 pawn if you're going into endgame, because it might be a weakness.
Yes.
But in this position, we do have knights and rooks on the board,
Yep.
which makes the e5 pawn once again very strong, because e4 square for the knight is great, and for the black knight it's difficult to find the place. Knight d6 I'm not allowed to go, knight d4 once again I'll be kicked out. Where to go?
It's a great question, and it also prevents the king.
Yeah.
Right? So it's a nice looking bind for white for the moment. G4 has to be timed correctly, because if you do play G4, you're committing yourself to the possibility that your F4 pawn is a target. For example, knight H4. Don't want to put my knight there, but if something happens very quickly, maybe my pawn F4 feels like it's being targeted, right? Knight G6, rook F8, things like that. So definitely a possibility, but it's so tempting.
It is so tempting, because if you don't kick this knight out, then black doesn't have any problem with that knight.
Right.
A lot of things going on today. We had a very interesting game versus between Jordan van Forest and Jan Nepomniachtchi, who is one of the leaders of Tata Steel Masters, and we thought that he was in a bit of trouble because white has such a great position.
Yep.
But looking at it right now, I think that it is a typical Najdorf type of position. Black attacks on the queen side, white attacks on the king side, but I think that white's attack seems to be more powerful.
Yeah, and it's very interesting in this game here between Van Forest and Nepo that all of a sudden this d5 pawn can be captured. So that's the, way back here, somewhere in these parts, it just looked very nice for white. You're going to plug a knight on d5. So Nepo made all the normal moves, rook e8, plugged the knight on e5 himself, and went bishop to h3.
Right.
Taking here looks very good for white, especially when you think, oh, look at these really ugly double pawns. But you're giving access to the c file. b4 is a threat. Knight c4 can come in at some moment. So it's not really ideal in a position like this to go after these captures. So bishop h3 was played. And what I love now is the light squares. This knight can come to f5.
Yeah.
Knight d5 was played. And here comes the knight back to b6. So you want to play knight c6.
You do.
But I take this pawn on d5. I remove the guard. And you take with check here. But my knight can come back. And it's all good for black. It's still...
Yeah, I agree with you, and this is very double-edged, I would say. And Najdorf players, we are used to see such positions because we have our own ideas on the queen side, and it's always concrete. It's very concrete.
Right.
Like you cannot say that, oh, okay, I have this plan, this, and I'm mating. No, it's very concrete. Black has always some defensive resource. Maybe sometimes queen comes, like queen c4, and right away goes to the other flank. In this case, it doesn't make sense, but anyway, I wouldn't say that this is a very big advantage for white. I do like white's position. I think it went very well for him from the opening, but this game is not over.
Yeah. This game is definitely not over. The question always is, can I take this pawn on d5? Because it's free. Nothing's protecting it. But it's also very risky as I see, well, what if white just starts this attack? Can I play g6 right away? For example, if I play g6 and you take with this pawn, I go h5, and you're probably going to get checkmated down the h5.
Ooh, yeah, that's very scary because g5, h6 wouldn't help black. Okay, you can play g6, but this is so scary. I mean, moves like knight e6 even can be an idea. Ooh.
But I think that Jordan will take his time because there's no need to rush.
Yeah.
Because actually by playing g6, you allow this bishop to maybe come out and threaten this knight. Because if this knight is removed, then the pressure down the c-file will be really annoying to deal with. So I think a move like h5 and then potentially g6. It's not looking so fun to me to be black in this position. But Nepo's experience, he's playing pretty quickly.
He does, yeah. But he generally plays very quickly. He likes to play. Once I think he had a record that game started at 1:30, like the usual time control, and when he finished, he had 2 hours and 8 minutes on the clock. So he was really going for it.
Yeah, and we'll let him figure out his next move because I just peeked at this game between your husband, Anish Giri, and Fedoseev.
Ooh,
So
lots of things happened there.
Yes.
Okay, there we go.
Now, people want to see action, and I see them in the chat, people talking about the Magnus game. We'll look at the Magnus game versus Anand. That will go on for a while. The position has fewer pieces on the board. It's not the most exciting game ever. This is more tactical. And the last move was pawn b4 to b3. And so I don't know about you. When I look at this position, I'm thinking, well, at what point does this bishop come to h6? At what point do I open up the f-file and try to deliver a checkmate?
Yeah, as I mentioned it before with Peter, I covered a bit of this closed Sicilian, and this is the way I always liked it for white a bit because I'm very optimistic with the kingside attack. But on the other hand, there is no quick mate, and you need some kind of sacrifices to open up the files because look at the bishop on g2. It's not a great piece for the moment. Knight g3 is doing something, but I guess it's only doing to be sacrificed. Like you want to go knight h5 or fg and knight f5, just somehow to open. If you don't open the files, then you won't get anything.
I agree.
And yes, white has an attack on the king side, but black won the battle on the queen side. So it is very, very double-edged. I do think that black does not have a problem, but it is very sharp.
Yeah, and one of the things also that's worth mentioning is if bishop h6, often black plays a move like bishop to g5, saying, please take my rook.
Oh, do. Yeah.
I don't mind about if you do, because you'll be up in exchange. But if we talk about quality of pieces, yes, a rook is 5 points, a minor piece is 3. This bishop is unopposed, can come to f4. This queen can slide over to h6, and there's clear pressure that black can exploit. Rooks need open files.
Right.
The white rooks lack them. It takes a while to get into the action here, whereas I see black's counterplay can quickly pick up steam.
It is very much the King's Indian type of idea where they always try to get rid of this bishop, which for first time it was, I didn't understand that quite well because I thought that this bishop is really, it is with my king, and why do I want to trade it and weaken my king side? We know that if you have g6 already on the board, you want to have bishop on g7, but the problem is that it is closed with his own pawn on e5, so you don't want to have bad piece, and in this case bishop on d2 is better than bishop on f6.
Yeah.
That is why it favors black to trade this bishop and have the dark squares, and king is not weak, so that's the point.
No, everything you said is absolutely correct, and what interested me as well is rook a1 was played, and Anish responded pretty quickly with bishop to b5. This is what the whole point of b3 was, to undermine the protection of this pawn.
That's an interesting choice.
And if you touch this pawn, okay, if you take here, you lose the pawn directly. If I play a move like c4, Black doesn't want to move the bishop back because then white has closed down the queen side and has free opportunity on the king side. If you take en passant, bishop takes c3.
d5 might come.
Exactly, d5. And yes, maybe this bishop gets some new space, but at the same time, I'm threatening moves like d4. If you take and I take with my knight, I'm threatening to take your bishop on c3 or playing moves like knight f4.
I get knight e3, knight f4
Yeah.
kind of moves. I totally agree with you, and I wanted to add actually why I like bishop b5 is that maybe if we take on c2, there is an idea of knight a6, knight c5. So it also supports knight to come to c5 and get some pressure on d3.
I actually like that a lot. And let's say we make a move like rook f2, and this knight comes here. There might be some problems immediately on this d3 square, and not easy to defend. You have to drop your bishop back to f1, but then it's a very passive piece. So perhaps rook f3 is perhaps a smarter move. That way I defend the d3 square and make room for an eventual double on the f-file. That being said, I wouldn't take on c2. I'll just leave that pawn there because white does not want to capture here.
Right.
As that opens up this file for the rook, and this pawn on b3 for white won't be doing much. And that way I also prevent white, at least for another move, from getting pieces over to the f-file and starting an attack.
Right, and one thing I would also add would be that sometimes when you look at the position, you see that you have doubled pawns on d-file, so your first intention is just to get rid of them. So you want to play d5. But in this case, d5 is not a good move because the knight on g3 is actually dreaming to get the e4 outpost. If d5 happens, e takes d5 and knight d5, yes, black got knight on d5, yes, he has e3 square and f4 square, but knight would get to e4 where he would be very extremely happy. So I would not recommend d5 at any moment in this position.
Absolutely, and it's so tempting as you mentioned because you've double pawns. So d5 gets rid of the double pawns, but it opens up white's pieces, the bishop on g2, the knight on g3 coming to e4. So absolutely correct. So black will sit with this pawn on b3 for a while. I tend to like black's chances in positions like these because it's very double-edged. As we noted that black is trying to collapse white's position, try to take on c2, ooh, not there, take on c2 eventually, undermine the protection of d3, and white at some point will try to go for an attack on the king side with bishop h6 and things like that, but it's all about timing here.
Right, and we have something in Kramnik's game. Did something happen?
So rook b to f1 was played.
Yeah, that's what was your first intention, and you guessed it correctly. Rook f1 was played with the idea of knight e7 maybe at some point. Rook f7 is the threat. This is a little update on this game. Do we have any updates in Parham's game? Because it was very interesting when we were looking with Peter. It was just, oh my God, what is this? So Queen...
what has happened in this game?
Okay.
By the way, I do think Vida is completely winning in that position.
Yeah.
But what in the world? I saw you left off at the queen c7.
Yeah.
And rook d7.
Oh,
check.
So it was played. That was my first suggestion.
Yeah.
If I can play rook d7 and take, but then we thought that you cannot really afford it because, exactly, because of this intermezzo. And then after king d7, do you want to take queen g8?
Apparently, Parham did.
Yeah, he did, though it is important that the pawn is on b2. If the pawn was not on b2, I wouldn't be afraid. But after c4 was played, but why not bishops? Okay, bishop c2, queen f7
Exactly.
Okay.
Just in the nick of time here to take on f7 and then start attacking into this king.
That's awful.
So he went Barev went c4 and also is down really a lot on the clock. Queen h8.
Okay, back to game, yeah?
Yeah, trying to come back to h3, but somehow this pawn still wasn't captured.
That's a bit, maybe because queen h3, queen c3, then b1 is there? But this I don't get it.
Okay, you can't go here because check.
Yeah.
King c7 feels most natural. And is there still some kind of queen somewhere?
I thought maybe queen c3, b1, and then we have take and queen c4. So this we might lose the b1 bishop at some point.
Yeah, that's also very true, actually. Where does this king go? Because if it goes here, you immediately lose the bishop.
Yeah.
And if you move elsewhere, well, the f7 pawn is hanging, but you're probably right that the bishop is going to be lost. So...
First, king c7, prophylactic move.
Queen h4, rook c8.
Oh, wow. That's classy.
But queen d4 just wins this pawn.
Oh.
So what
that's classy.
Yeah, what you need to do is have your bishop on a3 and maybe your pawn on b4 to defend it, but after it takes, you can just take this pawn on b2.
Yeah.
And okay, black has counterplay.
There's
definitely some counterplay here, but you're losing your pass pawn.
Yeah.
You have the c pawn that just passed as well. And I'm not sure white has enough to win a game like this, because if we take and this bishop sits on d3, maybe my king goes to b8, how many pawns is black?
Yeah, it is just 2 bishops and a pawn, yeah?
2 bishops and a pawn for a queen.
Yeah. 2 bishops, though it's always, I always have a feeling that, okay, 2 bishops, it's really, like, if he had knights and a bishop, I would think that, yes, this is great winning chances for white, but 2 bishops and a passed pawn, I'm afraid it, though I have my trumps, I have like 3 against 2, I don't know.
I think it's winning, objectively.
Yeah.
It should be, like, very good for white of not winning, but I think, as you said, practically 2 bishops against a queen, because it makes it hard for the queen to maneuver with the bishops covering the diagonals. So I think Parham will win this game. The time situation also leads me to believe that he's on his way. He's up 40 minutes on the clock. So that's really nice to see for him. For all Parham fans, World Junior Champion.
Yeah.
And we have Magnus and Vichy still...
No, g4, knight h4 happened, like
I knew
you
the knight was
suggested.
coming there. Well, the good thing with the knight being here is it can't be kicked out anymore.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe if I... Can I do that? We don't like double pawns often, but here that'd be excellent. Because you open up the h file and attack the knight.
Yeah, it would be great here.
So rook f1.
But it's illegal.
Yep. And you have to play rook f8. Whoa, Magnus is down so much on the clock. I just looked at the time.
Wow,
Yeah.
24 minutes for the world champion versus 59. That's a lot. Wow, it looks like world champion took a lot of time to take decisions.
And he took so much time that I became Peter Leko. People are commenting on that. I love it. I would gladly be Leko. Let me be Leko.
Yeah.
This is what they're doing.
Go on.
Because they're trying to give me encyclopedic knowledge that I don't have. So they're just playing a game over here. And also, it looks like Shanklin and Rogerov just made a draw, by the way.
Oh.
So we'll stay here. That game was not going anywhere. But it's funny that people say in the chat, I see Yash Shah 44. Peter looks a lot like Robert. My brother's name is Peter, and we look quite a lot alike. So that comment I've heard many, many times in my life. Nothing new coming from the chat here. But rook hf1. Obviously, if you give me the chance, I want to play f5.
Yeah, that is very true. So the battle in this game is going to be, am I going f5 or I'm avoiding it? I mean, because black cannot really allow f5, I think, if he doesn't play a rook f8 right now, which is very logical. I would just play f5, but maybe it's not that great. Can it be because then I can play g6 and get e6 square for my king?
Yeah, it's very interesting that you're saying it. So let's allow it to happen. a5, f5, something like this, and the king eventually trying to come to e6. Right now there will be problems with the immediately, but your point was long term.
Right.
And so that's always an essential question. Is allowing f5 acceptable for black, or is it just going to cause my position to completely collapse? And if it's okay to allow f5, you may consider putting one of the rooks on d8, offering an exchange, one pair of rooks to be exchanged off. If you play g6, which stops f5, then you're going to be very unhappy.
We don't want to give up that f6 square. No way. Miss Strategy would fly back and she would just, oh my god, kill us.
Yes, exactly. Even though she plays the French, she still has problems with weakening square. Oh, sorry. Can't hate on the French too much. But rook f8 makes perfect sense because it stops f5. And then it questions white. What are you going to do as a response? Part of me is just saying, oh, well, what if I just go rook f2? Because your knight is going to come to one of these squares to pester my pawns. Knight g6 threatens this pawn.
Yeah.
I simply swing over. But what's the deal here? How am I going to get f5 in when this knight's attacking my pawn on e5?
It is tough, and that was the drawback of g4, because now you would like to have your pawn back on g3 to, you know, cover everything and cut the knight.
Yep.
But pawns don't go back.
Unfortunately,
as we know already. And yeah, I think that black is fine.
Yeah, I think so too. I think Anand has a lot of experience defending positions like this. It's not so much worse where he can't hold, but I'm always favoring the intact pawn structure, 4 on 3 on the king side. But I agree with you. It looks like Vishy is doing okay here. So we haven't checked out the Ding game against Mamedyarov in a long time, and this game looks like it's heading towards a draw. Right, the 4 on 3 on the king side is offset by the 1 on 0 on the queen side. So in all likelihood, black will play f6, play king g6, and just move back and forth.
Yeah, this looks like a draw.
So, wait a second, was it Carlsen who beat Nakamura in a position like this in the Singapore Cup?
But I think it was Nakamura, but it was crazy, no? He had real chances to defend it.
Yeah,
right.
And should have defended it.
Yeah.
But it was actually an endgame almost the same as this?
Yeah, it resembles very much, I think.
The way to lose a position like this for black, I think that's worth showing. So let's say I go king f3, f6, and then you let my king in. Something like this would be a great way to lose. But even still, here it's not so clear that it's lost, but it's a good attempt to get yourself in trouble.
I always, like, there are positions where your rook is great defender from behind, and there are positions where rook is great from the side.
Yes.
I think this is the position where you love to have rook c7 and not rook a8, because rook a8 is very passive. And rook c7, you can even at some point give up that pawn and give a lot of checks, or have like rook c4 or rook c2, any kind of these type of ideas which will lead to a draw.
Yeah, and honestly, even if we get in a position where, let's say I make this move and you take here, 3 on 2 in this kind of format still theoretically should be a draw.
Right.
So I don't expect Mamedyarov to blunder this one away. But, you know, we're enjoying our endgames, sure. I made a personal preference. Oh,
okay. Here we have the game of Magnus and Hikaru, and yeah, it was a bit different. But he had a7 pawn, so we were not very...
Right, that was what happened. The
Yeah,
pawn got to h5 and the king ran around.
Yeah.
And this is already big trouble for black because he gave up the a5 pawn, but because the king is stuck to the h-pawn, all rook trades would have been to losing position. Yeah,
he allowed this g5, h5, which gives white a very, very big chance because it's a passer. It's a pass pawn and you're tied to stop it. But I guess this is way easier for Mamedyarov because he has pawn on h6. If this happens, did it happen already?
Yeah. This is the current position with he shuffled his rook to c7 here. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would leave this pawn to f7.
Yeah.
That way, even if my king gets to f5 for white, so what? There's nowhere to go from there. And you can, as you said before, your rook can come either to c2, c4, c5, and these kind of things look very pleasant for black to hold.
Is Nepomniachtchi in trouble?
I believe so. Let's go right over to Nepo because, well, just this attack.
Oh, yeah. He took on d5, and h5 was played. Mm-hmm. Bishop f8. So far, logical moves have been played.
Yep, and g6 is the move I would love to play, but I don't see sort of the knockout.
Yeah.
Right? You play g6, and then if I give white another move, what's your next move?
Yeah.
Maybe rook to f1 or something like that, but black is still alive and kicking, right?
I would like to play, to be honest, some kind of prophylactic move. Can I play like king a1 sort of move. And my idea is just that I want to sometimes have threats, you know, like knight f5 and then or knight b5, not necessarily knight b5, but g6, then sometimes knight e6 might be problem.
Yep.
But I'm a bit afraid of knight b4, though c3, yeah?
Yeah. But the king a1 move is actually really clever because you're, as you said, you're just getting out of the way, and c3 invites black to play b4,
right,
and open up the king. So king a1 is one of those sneaky moves, just avoiding any checks on the square, and that way your knight can move and feel a bit more comfortable. So that's one way of doing it. I think also a move like rook h2.
Yeah. Oh, I like that better.
Because now not only you're protecting c2,
yeah,
but you can go rook h2, rook f2, bring this rook on d1 over to f1, and there's a clear plan going after f7. But
I love rook h2.
Well, you made me think of it. Honestly, all credit should be yours here, because it's a way to just allow your knight to move. You're right. This knight needs to join the action, and coming over to f5 would be really awesome. But for the time being, the knight is stuck protecting the c2 pawn, and he went g6 right away. Okay, that was the first move that we're thinking about. Always just go through straightforward with the attack. And you know, we're here trying to predict moves in Weikanze while the players fight it out in Leiden.
Yeah, in a beautiful Peter's church. We wish we were in Leiden, and actually we have a short clip ready about Leiden, so enjoy it. Beautiful clip about Leiden. I love that city, and I am actually very lucky because I live pretty near we live in The Hague, so it's very near to Leiden.
And I'm unlucky because I don't live near Leiden. I've never been, and I wanted to go. So
yeah, but tomorrow.
Tomorrow's a rest day.
Tomorrow, yeah.
The sun will come out.
Yeah, the sun will come out. You will go to Leiden, and people will ask you, "Oh, you missed it. There was a round yesterday."
Yep. Yep. So there's a round there in Leiden. The two players who are done with their round there is Sam Shankland and Timur Rajabov. We have the final position from that game on screen. And we kind of expected that something like this might happen. Knight c5 was played earlier on, and that closed down any attempts at spying on a backward c-pawn, because now the c-file is closed. Well,
it's easy to play.
Yeah, and it seems like Rajabov knew the exact way forward. He traded off a pair of rooks, and look at this bishop. Comes back to e4.
Great thing, I wanted to say that great thing about c6, b5, and c5, b4 for black is that bishop is out. Imagine if this bishop was on b7, that would be different scenario. But bishop is out, so everything is good.
A bishop back here would make me love the French again.
Yeah.
Right? So the bishop is out.
You're French.
This is like an extremely good, it's nothing like the French, but the bishop is out, as you said, very good point. And okay, this series of trades happened.